Chapter 1554. The green-red dry fire gradually turned transparent, and Qin Mingwei's figure appeared from within. He held a pitch-black hook in his hand, and there was a dense grayish-black aura on the hook. The black aura was like a snake slithering around the hook. "How is it? How does the heart-devouring worm taste?" Qin Mingwei asked gloomily. This is a heart-devouring worm? How did you plant this heart-devouring worm in my heart? How come I didn't notice it? Evil Zhen's face was pale, and his head was covered in sweat. His eyes were red, and he asked fiercely, "Look at your technique. It's not the usual technique of the 10,000 poison sect. How come it's similar to the legendary talismans? How could Qin Mingwei care about him?" He waved the hook in his hand, and the grayish-black gas faded a bit. At the same time, his face turned slightly gray. Evil Zhen screamed and fell to the ground. He barely managed to stabilize himself. At this time, Qin Mingwei's face was red and the hook in his hand was trembling. The grayish-black gas was gradually absorbed into the hook. It seemed that he couldn't completely control the hook. Evil Zhen felt the pain in his heart lessen. He quickly sat down cross-legged and wanted to use his magic power. Evil Zhen, I didn't expect you to know about talismans. Himph. I'm afraid these years. You found a story in the technique teaching pavilion. Qin Mingwei was a bit weak and his voice was hoarse. However, you have good eyesight. I used a talisman technique. If I were you, I wouldn't use my magic power. Otherwise, the heart-devouring worm would be even more powerful. Evil Zhen ignored him. However, when he tried to use his magic power, he felt a heart-wrenching pain again. His face changed and he stopped. Then, Evil Tremor looked at Qin Mingwei, who was inside the cyan fire, and sighed. Ever since I came back from the ruins of the Buddhist sect, I've only seen Senior Martial Brother Qin once, 10 years ago. I've always been on my guard, so how could I have fallen into your trap? Senior Brother's heart-devouring worm. Ha ha ha, Qin Mingwei laughed heartily and said in a hoarse voice, "Junior Martial Brother Zhen, do you still remember the pill I gave you when you were injured by the guardian beast in the ruins of the Buddhist sect 30 years ago?" Evil Zhen was puzzled. "Remember? When I brought it over to take a look, it was to return it to Senior Brother." Suddenly, Evil Zhen's eyes flashed fiercely as he gritted his teeth and said, "Could it be that Senior Brother can place the heart corrosion worm on the elixir that day?" What do you think?" Qin Mingwei smiled and said, "Junior Apprentice Brother Zhen is clearly injured, but you didn't take Elder Brother's medicinal pills. Doesn't that mean you still have the heart to let her go?" "I didn't harm anyone either. Unlike Senior Apprentice Brother Can, who can actually cast a spell and make I fall for it without anyone noticing. Now that I's life is in Senior Apprentice Brother's hands, you call this guarding against people?" "Ha ha ha," Qin Mingwei laughed coldly. "Junior Brother Zhen, this is the pot calling the kettle black. I may have cast a spell, but that was to protect myself. If not for Senior Apprentice Brother's trap, how could I have triggered the heart corrosion worm? Junior Martial Brother Zhen, haven't you thought about why Senior Apprentice Brother I didn't trigger the heart corrosion worm even after 30 years? Isn't it because you haven't found the origin of the exquisite tower yet? You don't dare to act recklessly." Evil Zhen's expression softened as he sneered. The green fire around Qin Mingwei grew thinner and thinner as the orange fire swallowed up half of the green fire. Qin Mingwei's expression was bitter as he said, "If Junior Martial Brother Zhen reduces the power of the azurely fire array, I can answer your questions." Thinking for a moment, Evil Zhen took out a small flag and waved it, causing the orange fire to weaken a bit. "I am listening. I don't know how many years this spell technique has been lost. When I was refining Qi, I accidentally obtained this soul tool and learned some spell techniques. Unfortunately, cultivating spells is different from my cultivation path. Cultivation focuses on communicating with heaven and earth and using the heaven and earth's spiritual energy for one's own use. Spells, on the other hand, are related to the mysterious path of the soul. The soul is born in the body and tempering the soul. The foundation of cultivating spells is tempering the body. The body of a cultivator is extremely weak, so how can I cultivate spells? Senior Martial Brother can. You can cultivate body cultivation," Evil Zhen replied. At this moment, the two of them were completely different from before. They didn't look like two mortal enemies. If it weren't for the fact that one of them was in the fire and the other was sitting in the air with a strange expression on his face, anyone who saw them would have thought that they were two real martial brothers who were discussing Tao. Body cultivation? Those were merely some insignificant Taoists left behind after the decline of the Tao of talismans. I am already a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, so there is no need for me to take the wrong path. Qin Mingwei snorted. This heart-nibbling worm was originally a method of the 10,000 Poisons sect. If you used a normal method, I would have been able to detect it. How did Senior Martial Brother can use the spell technique? Evil Zhen asked thoughtfully. Qin Mingwei replied, this is something that I have learned over the years, so I naturally can't reveal it. In fact, it is very simple. Since my body isn't strong enough to cultivate spells, I naturally have to use it in a flexible way. Using the spell technique to control the heart-nibbling worm, even a golden core cultivator wouldn't be able to detect it, right? Humph, Evil Zhen sneered. Unfortunately, although I can use the spell technique to control the heart-nibbling worm, the price to do so is far from what Junior Martial Brother Zhen can imagine. Therefore, although I have a backup plan, I haven't used it yet. Qin Mingwei sighed and looked at the flames around him. He then looked at Evil Zhen, who was outside the formation, and said, I have told you so much because I want to tell you that I am only doing this to protect myself. If Junior Martial Brother Zhen removes this formation, I will immediately remove the heart-nibbling worm. You and I will still be good brothers. We will both comprehend this exquisite tower together. And Evil Zhen slowly nodded. Senior Martial Brother Kan's words are exactly what I was thinking. We have a great future and also have a Buddhist sect's treasure. There is no need for us to waste our time here. Qin Mingwei was overjoyed and clapped his hands. Great minds think alike. How about we cast the spell together? All right. Evil Quake slowly stood up and picked up the small flag. Qin Mingwei also raised the small hook, and the grayish-black fog came out again. As soon as Evil Zhen raised the flag, Qin Mingwei asked, Senior Martial Brother Kan, what is the price for using the heart-nibbling worm? Qin Mingwei was surprised. The hook in his hand paused for a moment. I'm afraid Junior Martial Brother won't believe me. Senior Martial Brother, it's up to me whether or not you believe me. Evil Zhen raised the flag again. 20 years of life, Qin Mingwei said and raised the hook in his hand. Evil Zhen's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Nodding, he said, all right, Senior Martial Brother Kansas. I will count to 3 and cast the spell at the same time. All right. 1, 2, 3. Evil Zhen didn't hesitate to count to 3. Once he finished counting to 3, the two of them would use their artifacts and soul armaments at the same time. Dozens of orange-red rays of light shot out from the small flag, but these rays of light didn't hit the area around the formation. Instead, they hit the orange-red flames around Qin Mingwei. At the same time, all of the black fog around Qin Mingwei's hook disappeared. Evil Zhen let out a heart-wrenching scream and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Inside the formation, the orange-red light shone everywhere. The fire was 10 times stronger than before and broke through Qin Mingwei's defenses. The orange-red flames quickly spread to Qin Mingwei's body. The two of them, both of them wanted to kill the other in an instant. Qin Mingwei was also shocked. He knew very well that this dry flame was the nemesis of his ignited fire physique. If the ignited fire true qi in his body was ignited by this dry flame, he would have no way to extinguish it. He would only end up being burned to death by this dry flame. Thinking about the blood oath he had made with Evil Zhen in the ruins of the Buddhist sect, Qin Mingwei's heart tightened. He desperately urged the little hook to kill Evil Zhen before the dry flame ignited his true qi. If Qin Mingwei was like this, how could Evil Zhen not be like this? When Evil Zhen heard that Qin Mingwei would lose 20 years of his lifespan to activate the soul-devouring worm, he didn't know if that was true or not. Since Qin Mingwei had paid such a huge price to activate the soul-devouring worm, how could he give up so easily? Activating the soul-devouring worm was already a huge price. But what about getting rid of it? Wouldn't the price be even higher? Moreover, talismans were very mysterious. Without a powerful spell, it was impossible to detect them. This was one of the reasons why the talismans were destroyed. Evil Jin wouldn't let such a dangerous enemy escape from the formation he had set up. As a result, Evil Jin was even more determined to kill Qin Mingwei. He had already used up all of his energy to activate the flag. He wanted to kill Qin Mingwei before the soul-devouring worm was fully activated. Whoosh! Evil Jin's body fell rapidly. He was in so much pain that he couldn't stand still in the air. The talisman's method was really strange. When Evil Jin was talking to Qin Mingwei, he had already tried several secret techniques of the Imperial Thunder Sect, but none of them worked. Through the control of the formation, Evil Jin knew that the fire was about to reach Qin Mingwei. He also knew that all of Qin Mingwei's magic tools and other items were refined with Li fire. If he used them, they would undoubtedly be combustible. Qin Mingwei wouldn't rashly use them. Evil Jin endured the incomparable pain in his heart and waved his hand. He struck himself with a spell seal and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the small flag. He quickly waved his hand, and a gorgeous orange light shot out from the small flag. As the light shot out, the small flag lost its color. Evil Jin's heart was in severe pain, and his vision turned black. His entire body fell from the air. A late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator was easily killed by a strange talisman without any room to resist. Presumably, Evil Jin wouldn't be able to rest in peace. He had so many tricks up his sleeve that he didn't even have the chance to use before he became the soul-devouring worm's food. Evil Tremor's final attack before his death was also frightening. When the light landed on the orange flames, the flames doubled in size. Qin Mingwei was surrounded by an orange sea of flames. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, Qin Mingwei clenched his teeth and took out a shiny talisman from his storage pouch. He activated his Fa Li and placed it on his body. With a buzzing sound, an extremely bright light flashed from Qin Mingwei's body. Within the light, Qin Mingwei's upper body gradually changed. His face, neck, and arms were covered in layers of fine lines. Moreover, his slightly pale golden skin turned green. After the light faded, a monster that looked somewhat similar to a giant she-beast appeared in the air. Its body was actually several feet taller than before. Roar! At this moment, Qin Mingwei's roar was different. It was like a horse's roar. His huge body charged through the flames and flew towards the formation's light barrier. However, just as Qin Mingwei's huge body passed through the sea of fire, the dry fire ignited his entire body. However, his green skin was thick and coarse, and it actually had the effect of blocking the dry fire. For a moment, it was unable to burn into his meridians. Rumble! Qin Mingwei flew in front of the formation. He raised his large fist and smashed it at the light barrier. Deafening sounds continuously came from the light barrier. The light barrier violently shook and showed signs of loosening. Qin Mingwei's divine sense sensed something and was overjoyed. His two fists rained down like raindrops. As the light barrier shook, the light gradually weakened. Without anyone controlling it, the formation truly began to collapse. However, as the light from the formation weakened, the green light on Qin Mingwei's body also weakened. The patterns on his exposed skin also gradually disappeared. True fear appeared in Qin Mingwei's eyes. As he struck the formation with one fist, his other hand continuously formed seals in an attempt to extinguish the flames. However, Qin Mingwei didn't dare to use any fire-type spells. As for water-type defensive spells, only powerful ones had some effect. However, these effects were like a cup of water in the seemingly endless sea of flames. Roar! Qin Mingwei raised his head and roared. He didn't think of anything else and continued to strike the formation with his two fists. Kacha! A crisp sound rang out and a slight crack appeared on the light barrier of the formation. Qin Mingwei was overjoyed. Just as he was about to strike the crack with his fist again, the green light on his body suddenly faded. At the same time, a dim talisman floated down from his body. No! Qin Mingwei panicked. He reached out his hand to grab the talisman, but at that moment, he saw a wisp of fiery light sweep across his body. His gradually shrinking body immediately began to burn like dry firewood. Qin Mingwei could sense that the quintessential qi in his meridians had been ignited as well. The fire began to burn from the inside out. Although he knew that Evil Tremor was no longer alive outside the formation, he still sighed. He slapped his hand and took out a small hook from his storage bag. Before he died, he waved it one last time. -7. Chapter 1555. Two late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators were both wounded in front of Xiao Hua. One was strangely killed by the mind-corroding worm, and the other was burned to death by the dry fire. Xiao Hua was originally lying on the ground of the spell formation, playing dead. However, as the two continued to act more and more brilliantly, Xiao Hua couldn't help but open his eyes and perk up his ears to watch the show. At this time, the sky was already dusk. The setting sun shone in the west with its blood-like splendor. The dusk and the shadows of the surrounding mountains covered the spell formation. Not far from Xiao Hua, the flame was still emitting its last blazing heat in the air. Alas, where there are people, there will be fighting. Master's wife is absolutely right. Xiao Hua was deeply moved. Although these two late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators didn't release their pressure, neither of them looked at Xiao Hua. However, their fighting methods, the power of the talismans, the effects of the talismans, and the terror of the dry fire all made Xiao Hua shudder. Xiao Hua deeply knew that even if he didn't use this spell formation, he wouldn't be able to last 10 moves against these two. 30 years, these two really could endure silently. For that so-called Buddhist treasure in the end, the two still lost their lives. The talisman technique, which is the sinister technique of Jinghua City's Zhu clan, is really powerful. Late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators don't even have the strength to fight back. However, the price of using the talisman technique is too high. 20 years of life. Alas, no matter how powerful the talisman technique is, it's not as powerful as this Qin Mingwei's scheming. He made the first move 30 years ago. In comparison, this evil trimmer is much worse. What was the crystal chip that Qin Mingwei used before he died? It looks similar to the Yunqing talisman that Li Zongbao used at that time. Could it be a talisman? Yes, it should be. I'm afraid it's some spirit beast's fur and blood that caused the body to mutate and produce great strength. Humph. This kind of strength is 10 times more powerful than the Vajra talisman, but it's much weaker than this young master's strength. Hee. The lifespan talisman technique, what Buddhist treasure, still depends on luck. Even late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators don't have the fortune to enjoy it, right? The death of a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator greatly stimulated Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua couldn't help but think a lot. As the last ray of light from the setting sun disappeared from the earth, Xiao Hua suddenly woke up. Damn it, what was I thinking? The two old things are dead, but I'm still trapped by the formation. Looking at the situation, if I can't escape by myself, I can only wait to be discovered. Let's not talk about whether they'll kill me to silence me if they think about the benefits. Even if it's the talisman spell or the Buddhist sect's treasures, I won't have a share in them. Making a prompt decision, Xiao Hua sent his consciousness into the space and called Goldie out. Mother. When Little Yellow heard Xiao Hua's words, he was very puzzled. Needless to say, he didn't understand anything about restrictions or formations. He could only look at Xiao Hua blankly. Little Huang, look, Mother can't even move. Her body is tied up by something. Come and help Mother untie it. Xiao Hua thought for a long time and could only say this. Xiao Hua originally wanted to say something else, but something that made him flabbergasted happened. He saw Little Yellow first look around with his eyes in confusion, then reluctantly fly to Xiao Hua's body and spin around for a while before landing in front of Xiao Hua. Then, he threw himself on the ground and closed his eyes, looking very tired. Poor child. Xiao Hua couldn't bear it. Just as he was about to let Little Yellow go back, the tightly shut third eye on Little Yellow's forehead gradually opened. That silvery white eye emitted an extremely faint silver brilliance. Following that emotionless eye circling around Xiao Hua's body, Little Yellow's third eye slowly closed. Then, Little Yellow didn't open his eyes, but said very weakly, Mother, I don't have any strength left. Can you call Little Silver out? Little Silver? Xiao Hua stared blankly, then immediately understood. His mind was everywhere, and the spirit-seeking mouse, which didn't listen to Xiao Hua at all, had been brought out with great difficulty by Xiao Hua. Little Silver had been running around anxiously when he couldn't find Little Yellow in the space, but he had listened to Little Yellow's instructions and didn't run out of the Tinjong radius. When he saw Little Yellow, he immediately flew onto Little Yellow's back and used his little tail to wrap around the fur on Little Yellow's back. Unfortunately, Little Yellow's fur wasn't long, and Little Silver couldn't wrap around it after trying a few times. Little Yellow pointed at Xiaohua's body with its mouth. Xiaohua should have understood, and the little mouse head shook its head repeatedly. It was very disdainful of Xiaohua, but in the end, it still reluctantly flew to Xiaohua's back, opened its little mouth, and started gnawing at the empty space on his back. Zzz, zzz, zzz. That faintly discernible sound kept coming. Xiaohua got goosebumps all over when he heard it. At that moment, Xiaohua had already sobered up from the strangeness of seeing Little Yellow's third eye. It was when the silver eye had appeared that the 4 words "Delusion Breaker Magic Eye" had flashed through his mind. If the one on Little Yellow's forehead is a Delusion Breaker Magic Eye, then isn't the one on my left hand also a Delusion Breaker Magic Eye? But why can Little Yellow's open, but mine can't? Xiaohua came to his senses, and this was his first thought. Furthermore, this Delusion Breaker Magic Eye can actually see the weakness of a restriction. Is this Little Silver gnawing on that restriction? My goodness, this spirit-seeking mouse is really different. It can actually use its teeth to gnaw on a restriction. He didn't know if it was because the restriction at the late Foundation establishment stage was abnormally tough, or if it was because Little Silver was still small and didn't have enough strength. But it wasn't until the full moon rose in the sky that Xiaohua suddenly felt the pressure on his back loosen, and then his whole body was shackled with a lot less force. Good. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists as hard as he could. Then, with a loud shout open, he pushed his arms outwards at the same time. Xiaohua was extremely strong at that moment. Although Evil Tremor's magic power was strong, Little Silver had already broken the Great Confinement spell. Wherever Xiaohua's strength passed, the entire restriction immediately collapsed, and with a flash of brilliance, it was completely annihilated. Little Silver, who had been on Xiaohua's back, was startled when it was suddenly bounced up. Before it could come back to its senses and fly onto Little Yellow's back, a big hand caught it. Little Silver was initially repulsed, but there was an aura in the big hand that made him feel peaceful. Little Silver couldn't help landing on the big hand, and very habitually, its little tail curled around Xiaohua's right little finger. It was exactly the same as when Little Silver was born. Little Silver's little head wasn't big enough. It raised its head and squeaked as it looked at the colossal Xiaohua, a trace of blood seeping out of Little Silver's teeth. AI, good Little Silver. Xiaohua had seen it earlier, and very tenderly reached out to stroke Little Silver's head. Little Silver closed its eyes slightly, looking like it was enjoying itself. After a while, Xiaohua put the exhausted Little Yellow and Little Silver into the space. Little Silver seemed to be reluctant to part with Xiaohua's hand as its little tail actually wrapped around it. It was only after Little Yellow scolded it that it reluctantly let go. But when Xiaohua was about to put Little Yellow into the space, he ran into another problem. Mother, there seems to be a very nice smell here, and it seems edible. I don't want to go back now, Little Yellow said tiredly as it refused to go back into the space. Xiaohua was very surprised. He had never known what Little Yellow ate, so when he heard it now, he naturally wouldn't let it go back so easily. Thus, Little Yellow lay on Xiaohua's shoulder and flew up into the air. The array which had been cracked by Qin Mingwei at dusk had already started to gradually recover, and the crack was almost gone. Xiaohua reached out and took the tip of the magic spear in his hand. He then exerted all his strength and swiftly stabbed the same spot on the crack a dozen times. With a hua sound, like glass shattering, a brilliant light flashed in the area of several dozen zhang around them. 6 sparkling discs appeared in the air, and then they all fell to the ground. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the 6 discs fell into his hand one by one. Looking at the runes on the discs, and then looking at the unknown texture of the discs, Xiaohua gave up the idea of exploring it and put all the discs into the space. Then, Xiaohua quickly walked over to Evil Quake's corpse and picked up the small flag that had fallen to the side. The small flag was heavy in his hand, and the flagpole was made of a pitch-black material. The flag was engraved with many flame-like runes, and with a slight wave, the runes seemed to be able to float. With the small flag and the discs, Xiaohua naturally wanted to find the method to set up the array. But looking at Evil Quake's corpse, Xiaohua hesitated. If he only took the method to set up the array, he naturally wouldn't be willing. Xiaohua definitely wouldn't let go of the things in Evil Quake's storage bag, but if he took everything, he couldn't leave the corpse behind. But if he didn't leave Evil Quake's corpse behind, then Evil Quake would mysteriously disappear. Maybe it would cause some commotion in the Imperial Thunder sect, and he wouldn't be able to get anything, and would even be caught. Grandma, who's afraid of who? This young master is only a Qi condensation disciple. You can suspect anyone, but this young master. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't let go of anything useful. He reached out and took off Evil Quake's storage bag, and without looking at the things inside carefully, he threw them all into the space. Then, he threw the empty storage bag on the ground, and with a wave of his right hand, a wisp of purple flame appeared in his hand. That flame looked incomparably pure, and also extremely poignant. It was the Samadhi true fire that Xiaohua had been practicing for more than 2 years. Xiaohua flicked his hand, and a purple spark flew out from the flame, slowly falling on Evil Quake's corpse. With a tongue sound, Evil Quake's corpse suddenly burst into flames, just like Qin Mingwei's body that was ignited. After a moment, seeing that Evil Quake's corpse and the storage bag had turned into ashes, Xiaohua held the Samadhi true fire in his hand and turned to look at the place where Qin Mingwei fell. Qin Mingwei was injured by the Samadhi true fire, so there wasn't any corpse on the ground. There was only a small pitch-black hook in the ashes and a small pagoda that was about 3 feet long and 1 foot wide. This small pagoda should be the exquisite heaven evolution pagoda that they were talking about. Xiaohua extinguished the Samadhi true fire in his hand, then reached out and picked up the exquisite heaven evolution pagoda from the ground. After looking at it roughly, he put it into the space. At the bottom of the exquisite pagoda, another small section of white bone was revealed. -7. Chapter 1556. Why is there a white bone here? Xiaohua's gaze fell on the ground where the exquisite pagoda was just now. A white bone was strangely placed there. It's Qin Mingwei's remains? Xiaohua was puzzled. If it's Qin Mingwei's remains, it's impossible for there to be only a section left. Moreover, it looks very neat. Who cares what it is? Thinking about what kind of talisman Qin Mingwei used, Xiaohua's heart trembled. The true Samadhi fire in his hand was still going to burn this white bone. However, what made Xiaohua even more shocked was that the white bone didn't turn into ashes like he imagined under the pure purple flames of the true Samadhi fire. Instead, it became even more lustrous. Only, this lustrous luster was faint green. Under the moonlight, it was somewhat frightening. Strange. Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He urged the magic power in his body and added 2 more wisps of true Samadhi fire. The fire burned even brighter, and the green light of the white bone became even brighter. After another moment, the green light on the white bone flashed. From the green light, crooked characters that were somewhat similar to tadpoles, but were also extremely different appeared. After these characters appeared, they flowed above the white bone like water, and the white bone returned to its original white appearance. It turned out that this faint green luster was emitted by these characters themselves. Green seal script. Xiaohua saw these characters and immediately cried out in surprise. Admittedly, he had never seen these characters before. However, he had seen them in the booklet given to him by the Jinghua City's Zhu family. These green seal scripts were precisely the characters that recorded the orthodox talisman techniques. They were different from the characters commonly used in the Xiaoyu continent's cultivation world. According to the booklet, these green seal scripts were characters that had been passed down from the primordial era until now. Each character had a mystical talisman power. The talisman techniques left behind from the primordial era could only be recorded in these characters. Moreover, they could only be used in these characters. Good heavens, when this young master saw it, I only took it as a pastime and even scoffed at it. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I dare to truly believe it. Xiao Hua opened his eyes wide and thought to himself, this green seal script is already so mystical. Then, those two unknown characters used by the primordial celestials, what are they like? What kind of earth-shattering magic power is there? While thinking, Xiao Hua reached out his hand and picked up the white bone. Following the instructions in the book, he released his perception and carefully touched the green seal on the white bone. Speaking of which, it was quite mysterious. The green seal followed Xiao Hua's perception and flowed towards his Niwen palace. However, Xiao Hua's mind did not gain anything from the green seal even after it rotated around Xiao Hua's Niwen palace for a moment. He was unable to read anything. Could it be that the records in the book are wrong? Xiao Hua frowned. But at this moment, the reverse light in the space behind Xiao Hua's head flickered. The green seal suddenly changed direction and entered the space. Moreover, it started to revolve around the reverse light. In an instant, symbols, words, and runes appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Moreover, as the images of those talismans and incantations were left in Xiao Hua's mind, the green seal gradually dimmed until it completely disappeared. This is different from what was recorded in the book. Xiao Hua felt the disappearance of the green seal and looked at the white bone in his hand. He was somewhat at a loss. He wanted to find an answer from the green seal in his mind. Unfortunately, he recognized the green seal, but the green seal did not recognize him. Xiao Hua could not understand a single word. Damn it! Xiao Hua waved the white bone in his hand. After thinking for a moment, he also stored it in the space. However, what he did not notice was that as soon as the white bone entered the space, extremely small lightning flashed in the space and attacked the white bone from all directions. Qin Mingwei's storage pouch was burned by the fire. All the spirit pills, spirit stones, and other things inside were gone. Only the exquisite derivation pagoda and the white bone that recorded the talismans and incantations were left. After taking these things, Xiao Hua's gaze naturally fell on the small hook on the ground. After seeing the use of this small hook, Xiao Hua envied the strangeness of this thing. Thinking about it with his feet, a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator was killed by this thing without anyone noticing. As a qi condensation cultivator, how could Xiao Hua not be moved? However, the reason why Xiao Hua took this thing in the end was because he had some misgivings about this so-called soul tool. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Sweeping his perception around the soul tool, he did not find anything abnormal. That grayish-black fog also did not reappear. Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the small hook immediately flew up and landed in Xiao Hua's hand. The hook was light as a feather, almost weightless. However, in Xiao Hua's hand, a cold feeling came from his hand and also from his heart. Strange. Xiao Hua had encountered too many strange things tonight. He could not help but say that it was strange a few times. Holding the small hook in front of his eyes, he turned it left and right. The pitch-black small hook also absorbed the brilliance of the full moon and did not emit any light. Zi Xiaohuang, who was lying on Xiao Hua's shoulder, suddenly opened his eyes and let out a shriek. What's wrong? Seeing Xiao Huang's shriek, Xiao Hua very naturally asked. But at this moment, a palm-sized shadow flew out from the small hook and pounced at Xiao Hua's face with extreme speed. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed and instinctively tilted his head back. However, that shadow was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already pounced on Xiao Hua's face. Xiao Hua only felt his vision darken. That palm-sized shadow actually penetrated Xiao Hua's head and pounced on the location of his Niwen palace. Your Niwen palace? Grandma, why don't you have a Niwen palace? Xiao Hua actually heard Qin Mingwei's voice strangely. He did not know whether it was in his ears or in his heart. Qin Mingwei, you. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the use of Qin Mingwei's soul tool at the last moment. This guy actually hid his primordial spirit in the soul tool and wanted to possess his Niwen palace. But, my Niwen palace? Why don't I have a Niwen palace? Xiao Hua's heart was greatly alarmed. At this moment, Xiao Huang, who had been lying on Xiao Hua's shoulder all this time, suddenly flashed with joy. With a swing of its large tail, it suddenly flew up to face Xiao Hua's face. Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit did not discover Xiao Hua's Naiwen palace and could only withdraw from Xiao Hua's mind. But at this moment, Xiao Hua, who was facing Xiao Hua, humphed. A white brilliance shot out from Xiao Hua's nose and covered Xiao Hua's face. An incomparably powerful suction force was born from that white light and firmly grabbed onto Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit. At this moment, a sound of panic came from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. Without waiting for Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit to say another word, the white brilliance from Xiao Hua's nose contracted and Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit was sucked into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua was stupefied. He never thought that Xiao Huang's food would actually be the primordial spirit of a cultivator. This was the primordial spirit of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, a primordial spirit that had been tempered for hundreds of years and was incomparably sturdy. It was actually so easily eaten by Xiao Huang. This scene was even more shocking than when Xiao Hua saw Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit fly out of the soul armament. It was even more shocking than everything he had seen and heard today. Burp. Xiao Huang seemed to burp. A voice rang out, "Mother, this thing is really fragrant. No wonder I smelled it just now. It was actually this thing. Mother, I'm tired. I feel warm, like I'm about to grow up." As Xiao Huang said this, its eyes actually slowly closed. "Oh," Xiao Hua replied. With a move of his hand, he also took Xiao Huang into the space. Sure enough, Xiao Huang laid down on the ground and immediately fell asleep. Having encountered a life and death situation, Xiao Hua was no longer in the mood to look at the uniqueness of the soul armament. With a shake of his hand, he put it into the space and then looked around Tinjiang around him. Seeing that there were no longer any obstructions, he flew up and headed in the direction Qin Mingwei came from during the day. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's direction wasn't wrong. During this time, he encountered a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Because he had just seen a sneak attack, Xiao Hua was exceptionally careful. But when that cultivator saw that Xiao Hua was a new disciple of Thunderclap Palace and that he had lost his way, he actually enthusiastically brought Xiao Hua to the vicinity of Thunderclap Palace. Although this cultivator was also going in the same direction, it was enough to make Xiao Hua sigh in his heart. Actually, it's not that some cultivators don't have a conscience and don't have refined and courteous etiquette. It's just that these cultured and refined appearances and the conscience hidden in the depths of their hearts are unable to withstand the test of benefits. As long as there is a conflict of interest, these so-called etiquette and conscience will likely be discarded. And if this cultivator knew that I had a Buddhist treasure on me, I fear he would have already killed me. He wouldn't be so amiable as to bring me back to Thunderclap Palace, right? So, the way to avoid a conflict of interest is to firmly guard your own secret and absolutely not let anyone know. Even if it's your own master or your own senior martial brother, you shouldn't use these great temptations to test each other's kinship. If you can really withstand the test, then it's fine. But if you can't, then the relationship between master and disciple, the relationship between senior and junior martial brothers, will all turn into smoke. If master and eldest senior martial brother are like this, then what about the other disciples of Thunderclap Palace and Thunderclap Sect? What about the direct disciples of Thunderclap Sect and the disciples of cultivator families? Wouldn't they be even more unreliable? Not to mention the temptation. Even a little high profile would make them jealous. It's better for me to keep a low profile. Now that I have a cultivation technique, medicinal pills, and many other things, I lack time to cultivate all day long. Who has the patience to play this game with them? As Xiao Hua thought this, he made up his mind and was about to step into Thunderclap Palace when a cold voice sounded. "Xiao Hua, you weren't in Thunderclap Palace last night?" Xiao Hua was stunned. When he turned his head to look, he saw that it was Jin Liang, who he had seen in the Jade Archive Hall yesterday. "This is bad. I just beat this guy up yesterday. How did he see me today? This is karma." Xiao Hua somewhat helplessly stopped his steps. -7. Chapter 1557. Xiao Hua was a bit hesitant to answer Jin Liang's question. Xiao Hua didn't know how he should answer Jin Liang's question. He only heard from Xiangyang that he was a qi refining disciple and had to return to Jinlei Palace every day, but he didn't know what kind of punishment awaited him. Thinking for a moment, Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, Senior Brother Jin, I followed Senior Brother Xiangyang to Thunder Palace yesterday to get an errand. When I came back, I was lost and didn't dare to fly around at night. I waited until dawn to leave. I met a Foundation establishment martial uncle outside earlier, and it was he who sent me back. According to Xiaohua's thoughts, Jinliang would definitely use this mistake of his to teach him a lesson. Xiaohua didn't have any reason to make up an excuse, so he could only tell the truth. Who would have thought that Jinliang's face would reveal a strange expression? He looked at Xiaohua from head to toe, snorted from his nose, and said, It's no wonder. The other disciples came to the Jade Archive Hall on the first day to register and receive their identity token, but you came late on the second day. Moreover, you came in such an aggressive manner that you didn't give any face to the other disciples who were guarding the hall. Then, you hurriedly went to the Thunder Palace to show off your power. How could you think of receiving your identity token? Since that token is the proof of our thunder-controlling sect's disciples, it also has the map of our 8 great thunder palaces and other dangerous palaces. If you didn't take the token, how could you not get lost in Laimo Mountain? Hearing Jin Liang's words, Xiao Hua's face turned green and red. He really didn't know, and the cowardly Xiangyang probably forgot about this matter because he saw Xiao Hua teaching a lesson to a disciple of Jade Archive Hall. Jin Liang patted his hand and took out a token and a thin booklet from his storage pouch. He sneered and said, I called a disciple to find you at your residence last night, but you weren't there. I had no choice but to send you off personally today. Then, he waved his hand, and the token and booklet flew to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua reached out to receive them and bowed. Thank you, Senior Brother General yesterday. Forget it. It's already over. Don't mention it. Jin Liang waved his hand and turned to leave. As he walked, he said, The token needs to be recognized by blood. The booklet records the key to using the token. Take a good look. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua didn't think that he would pass this test so easily. His face was full of smiles as he respectfully sent Jin Liang off. After returning to the fledgling Thunder Peak, Xiaohua sat down cross-legged in his cabin number 1334. He originally wanted to take inventory of the things he obtained from the Evil Shaker, but in addition to spirit stones, spirit grasses, and dawn, there were only a few magic tools and a few jade slips that seemed to have some origin. Xiaohua knew that these things could not be used by him in the qi refining stage, and he absolutely could not use them. Therefore, after thinking about it for a while, he gave up. Xiaohua first took out the token and the booklet. The booklet was very thin, and Xiaohua finished reading it in the time it took to eat a meal, after which he closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, he stretched out his finger, and a drop of blood was forced out from his finger and dripped onto the token. Just like the situation yesterday in the Jade Archive Hall, the blood did not seep into the token. Only under the control of Xiao Hua's perception did it gradually seep into the token. As it seeped in, the entire token emitted a faint golden color and then disappeared, returning to its original appearance. Damn it! The blood on this young master's body seems to have a problem. Xiao Hua sighed. In the future, I can't casually reveal it. Then, Xiao Hua made a hand seal and urged his magic power to hit the token. A bright light flashed, and a rather large topographic map emerged from the token. On the map, there were 8 shining spots, which were very eye-catching. These 8 spots are the 8 great thunder palaces, right? Then, where am I? Looking carefully, sure enough, in one of the light spots, there was a small golden spot flashing. Oh, this is the Jinlei Palace? While thinking, Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the dot of light gradually enlarged. 3 small words appeared, Jinlei Palace. Looking around the 8 great thunder palaces, some places were dark, some places were gray, and there were even a few places that were red. According to the booklet, the red ones should be the forbidden areas of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the gray ones should be the places where there were few people, and the dark ones should be the places where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was scarce. Haha, sure enough, there is a sect. Different from rogue cultivators, these things don't need a single spiritual stone to get. This young master is not afraid of getting lost in the future. Then, Xiao Hua changed his hand seal again, and the token in his hand trembled slightly. Then, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand on the token, and a token that was exactly the same as the one in Xiao Hua's hand was caught in his hand. Ha ha ha, fun. Xiao Hua put the token in his hand into another token, and that token actually disappeared into the other token. Then, Xiao Hua used his hand to catch more tokens, and one after another, exactly the same token appeared out of thin air. Hee hee, little junior brother. What are you doing? Just as Xiao Hua was having fun, Xiang Yang's voice came from outside the wooden house. Xiao Hua threw a few tokens on the table in the wooden house and bowed to Xiang Yang, who entered the door and said, "Greetings, big senior brother. I heard you laughing before I entered the door," Xiang Yang said with a smile. "Little brother just received a token, and I'm practicing with it." Xiao Hua pointed at the pile of tokens on the table and laughed. "Io, look at me." Xiang Yang patted his forehead with his hand and said, "I actually forgot to receive your identity token in the Jade Archive Hall yesterday. If you have forgotten, then forget it." Xiao Hua took back the token and said with a smile, "The disciple who was beaten in the Jade Archive Hall this morning sent it to me." "And? They sent it?" Xiang Yang was slightly surprised, and then nodded slightly. "AI? It seems that it's good to have some background." "What background can I have? I just got a so-called sect master's token." Xiao Hua was disdainful. "Io, my little junior brother, a so-called sect master's token is really easy for you to say. How many cultivators in my Imperial Thunder sect, no matter how profound their cultivation is, how many of them have a sect master's token? Besides, the number of Qi condensation disciples and Foundation establishment disciples who have a sect master's token can be counted on one hand, right?" Xiang Yang said with a face full of admiration. "Hee hee, let's not talk about this." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Big senior brother, what urgent matter did you have yesterday? Is it done?" "Oh, it's nothing." Xiang Yang clapped his hands and took out a booklet and a token. He said with a smile, "This booklet contains the cultivation method for the first level of lightning evasion. Your senior sister-in-law copied it for you last night." "Hee hee, thank you. Big senior brother, thank you." Senior sister-in-law? Xiao Hua was happy in his heart. He first took the booklet, then looked at the other token strangely. "Oh, this token was found by Master last night, when he went to the Thunderclap Palace to ask the Palace Master to help you find it." Xiang Yang smiled and handed the token to Xiao Hua. "Help me find it?" Xiao Hua took it blankly and looked left and right, not knowing what to do. "Let's go. You just need to follow me to the Spring Thunder Hall." Xiang Yang rarely kept him in suspense and left the wooden house first. In the Spring Thunder Hall, the disciple on duty was Jin Jin from before. Xiao Hua naturally knew. Jin Jin didn't joke with Xiang Yang and only looked at Xiao Hua and asked curiously, "Xiao Hua, could it be that your helpless master dislikes you for being a loose cultivator and doesn't want you anymore?" Xiao Hua curled his lips in his heart and didn't dare to say anything. Xiang Yang cupped his hands and said, "Xiao Hua's aptitude is exceptional and is a rare disciple of the Thunderclap Palace. How could my master not want you? I came here on the orders of the deacon of the Thunderclap Palace's Qi Qiao Pavilion. Xiao Hua is guarding the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, which is really too far from the Thunderclap Palace. Going back and forth every day is really tiring, so Xiao Hua can choose a place to cultivate in the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden. He doesn't need to report to the Thunderclap Palace every day." "Oh, so it's like that." Jin Jin didn't have any special reaction. With a wave of his hand, the token in Xiao Hua's hand flew into his hand. He scanned it with his divine sense and nodded, "I understand. In a while, I will bring this token to report." It seems that not having to report to the Thunderclap Palace every day isn't rare. Xiao Hua suddenly understood, but immediately after, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. Indeed, from the Deafening Thunder Palace to the 10,000 Thunder Valley, then from the 10,000 Thunder Valley to the Deafening Thunder Palace, and then to the Jin Thunder Palace early this morning. Xiao Hua already knew the distance, especially when he had to ask for the Palace Lord's permission at night. Most likely, his master had no choice but to go to the Deafening Thunder Palace personally. Xiang Yang had been busy since yesterday until today. He had been working hard for this little junior brother of his whom he had just met. He was helpless. Sigh, Xiaohua sighed. In this world, other than mutual deception and life and death struggles, there was also touching warmth and care. Let's go, little junior brother. I will bring you to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden. Xiang Yang cupped his hands and said to Xiaohua, There's no need, right? Eldest senior brother, I have the token with me. There is also a map on it. I can go there alone. Xiaohua said, Don't. Let me bring you there first. Xiang Yang said with a smile, The Eastern Ridge Herb Garden is very far. There are many forbidden and dangerous areas. If little junior brother accidentally enters, not to mention master, even your senior sister-in-law will question me. Then I will have to trouble you, eldest senior brother. Xiaohua's heart felt warm. The Eastern Ridge Herb Garden was indeed very far. Xiang Yang's thunder escape technique was also not successful. Although he was already in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, his flying speed was still not as fast as Xiaohua's. Therefore, when they arrived at the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, it was already close to noon. Of course, along the way, Xiang Yang pointed out the locations of several forbidden and dangerous areas. Xiaohua held the token and looked at it, while secretly memorizing it in his heart. The place where he met with danger last night was a grayish-black area on the topographic map. It was called the Evil Stream Plain. It should be a place where the heaven and earth ling qi was insufficient and where there were few people. Xiaohua wanted to ask about the situation there, but when the words reached his mouth, he stopped. He planned to bury the matter of last night in his heart for the rest of his life. Look, the Eastern Ridge is not far ahead. Xiang Yang pointed. In the distance, a continuous mountain range rose and fell. The mountain range was light yellow and looked very dazzling under the sunlight. -7. Chapter 1558. Light yellow? Xiaohua looked from afar and was slightly startled. He asked in a low voice, Is it because of the Eastern Ridge's earth fire? Xiang Yang nodded. Exactly. It is said that this place used to have abundant heaven and earth spiritual energy. My Thunder Palace's Qiao Pavilion set up a medicine garden here to plant spiritual herbs. However, thousands of years ago, there was a huge change in Dawn Rain continent. Earth fire suddenly appeared in Eastern Ridge, and the heaven and earth spiritual energy here became scarce. Moreover, the fire attribute spiritual energy took up the majority, making it unsuitable for spiritual herbs to grow. Later, Qiao Pavilion set up a pill room here, wanting to borrow the power of the earth fire to refine pills. However, the earth fire was fine at first, but later on, it became scarce. Moreover, this place was extremely far from Thunder Palace, so the pill room was abandoned over time. The two gradually flew closer as they talked. Xiang Yang pointed at the yellow spiritual herbs on Eastern Ridge's light yellow mountain range and said with a smile, Although the pill room was abandoned, the spiritual herbs grew freely. No one cared about them. After all, the spiritual herbs that we consume have to be aged. If you don't care about them, they will grow by themselves. My Thunder Palace's disciples only need to come here at fixed times to take a look and pick suitable spiritual herbs. Those yellow spiritual herbs seem to be Shaoyin grass? Xiaohua looked at the spiritual herbs on the mountain range and asked with some hesitation, These spiritual herbs are very rare outside. I have been to Yi before, but I have never seen them. I have only seen them in books. Hee, I didn't expect junior brother to also know about spiritual herbs. Xiang Yang clapped and said with a smile, This is precisely Shaoyin grass. I don't know when it was, or which disciple saw that Shaoyin grass, which was rarely seen in other places, grew extremely well here. So he advised the palace's deacon to plant Shaoyin grass everywhere. I didn't expect to hit the jackpot. Ever since Shaoyin grass was planted in Eastern Ridge, my Thunder Palace's bright flower pill no longer lacked spiritual herbs. Bright flower pill's main ingredient is Shaoyin grass? Xiaohua asked curiously. Since Shaoyin grass is so precious, why is there no one guarding here? Junior brother doesn't know. The Shaoyin grass from before is indeed precious, but the Shaoyin grass planted here probably won't be used up in a few hundred years. Do you think Shaoyin grass is still precious in my Thunder Palace? Besides, this place was really far from the Thunderclap Palace. Which chi condensation disciple would be willing to come here? Moreover, with the formation set up by our Thunderclap Palace's formation experts, is there still a need to keep watch? Xiangyang stopped and smiled. Little junior brother, what about the Eastern Ridge's token? If you don't use the token, I'm afraid that only martial uncles of the Oris core stage would be able to break in. Xiaohua nodded as he listened. He clapped his hand and took out the token. He already knew how to use this token. He formed a seal and his magic power surged out. A wave-like brilliance rushed out from the token. As the brilliance flashed in the air, the brilliance expanded. When it was about 100 feet in front of Xiaohua, it suddenly scattered into specks of light and landed in the air. Sizzle. The light spots were like water droplets falling into a pot of oil. The space where each light spot was located trembled slightly. The trembling was not synchronized at first, but as the trembling increased, it gradually became the same. Rumble, the sky seemed to shake and the earth shook. At the place where the light spots landed, a huge yellow mirror appeared. The other side of the mirror was exactly the same as what Xiaohua had seen before. However, Xiaohua sensed that there were fluctuations of world energy all around the mirror. Only the surface of the mirror was very calm. Needless to say, this mirror should be the passageway to enter the cave. Sure enough, Xiangyang waved his hand and said, "Let's go." After saying that, he flew into the mirror and disappeared. When Xiaohua followed him in, Xiangyang had already set on the mountain ridge not far away. According to the instructions on the token, Xiaohua and Xiangyang were able to easily find the disciple who was guarding the medicine garden in a rather large immortal's cave after his meditation. Ha ha ha. Seeing a place about the same size as Master's Immortal's cave, Xiaohua almost jumped up in joy. Xiangyang looked at this little junior brother who was beaming with joy. His previous worry had already disappeared. Although Xiangyang wasn't very familiar with the Immortal's cave in the Eastern Ridge, he still took Xiaohua to see it. This Immortal's cave was divided into 3 sections. The outermost section was a living room with jade tables, chairs, and other things. In the middle was a cloud bed for resting. Next to the cloud bed were bookshelves and other things. The innermost section was the largest and was divided into different caves. There was even a mountain spring that led into these caves. Looking at Xiaohua's somewhat puzzled expression, Xiangyang smiled and said, "Generally, the Immortal's Cave of a Cultivator is divided into these 3 sections. Little junior brother should know about the outermost and middle sections. As for the innermost section, most of them are used to cultivate extremely precious spiritual herbs. For example, in Master's Immortal's Cave, there are spiritual herbs that are rare even in the Imperial Thunder sect." Then, he pointed at the spring and the cave and said, "This cave is probably used to cultivate different spiritual herbs. Moreover, this Immortal's Cave should have existed before the Eastern Ridge was turned into a medicinal garden." Hee, eldest senior brother is right. Xiaohua smiled and said, "There are spiritual herbs all over the mountain. Who would plant spiritual herbs in their own Immortal's Cave?" Hee, I'm just guessing. Xiangyang shook his head and said, "Actually, each spiritual herb requires a different amount of spiritual qi. Although the Eastern Ridge is rich in spiritual qi and it's more than enough to cultivate ordinary spiritual herbs, it's still not enough to cultivate precious spiritual herbs. Didn't you see these different caves? Every cave should have a different array, used to promote the growth of different spiritual herbs." Promote the growth of spiritual herbs? Xiaohua's heart stirred. It was very easy for him to think of the space's backtrack. "Okay, little junior brother, I still have other things to do. I won't take you around the Eastern Ridge." Xiangyang stretched and said, "After all, this Eastern Ridge. I've only been here a few times. Wait until you're familiar with it, then you'll know." "Thank you for your guidance, eldest senior brother." Xiaohua bowed and thanked him. "You and I are brothers. There's no need to be so polite." Xiangyang helped Xiaohua up and said, "Actually, when you asked why there's no one guarding the Eastern Ridge, there are still 2 reasons that I didn't tell you. Senior brother, there's no harm in saying it." When Xiaohua heard that there were actually 2 reasons, he couldn't help but be surprised. The first reason is that the spiritual qi here is very violent. It's not easy to draw it into the meridians, and it's very unfavorable for a qi condensation stage disciple's cultivation. Xiang Yang looked at Xiao Hua's not too good expression and said, however, I heard from Master that little junior brother has the hidden fire physique. The fire attribute is the most violent. Maybe it won't affect you much. You can try first. If it really doesn't work, then you'll have to do this job for a year. At this time next year, when you're promoted from an apprentice disciple to an official disciple, it won't be too late to find another job. Okay. Xiaohua nodded. Now that I think about it, I really should have discussed it with eldest senior brother first. I was really rash at that time. Hee, you're still young. Once bitten, twice shy. This little loss is nothing, Xiang Yang said. Then, he adjusted his expression and said in a low voice, there's still the second reason? It's a place 100 li north of the eastern ridge. It's the strangest forbidden area of the Imperial Thunder sect. Previously, it was said that several disciples on duty inexplicably disappeared. No one knew if they were alive or dead. Some people suspect that it has something to do with that forbidden area. Xiao Hua was frightened by Xiang Yang's words and broke out in a cold sweat. He couldn't help but shrink his neck. Therefore, little junior brother, if you have nothing to do, don't go out blindly. Inside the Eastern Ridges formation, there will be disciples from the Qiqiao Pavilion coming to pick flame dawn grass every year. Now that you're on duty, if they come, open the formation and give them a sufficient amount of flame dawn grass. If they don't come, then send the flame dawn grass back to Thundershock Palace. Left and right. Don't go near that forbidden area, Xiang Yang said seriously. Oh, so that's how it is. After listening to Xiang Yang's warning, Xiao Hua's heart relaxed. Xiang Yang's words had always been filled with warnings, but Xiao Hua understood that this last reason was most likely made up by Xiang Yang himself. He was afraid that Xiao Hua would be immature and run around. This eastern ridge was more than 100 li away from the forbidden area. It was also protected by an extremely powerful formation. How could those disciples disappear for no reason? I'm afraid it's the same story as Zhanxia and Qin Mingwei last night, right? Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. However, he was also grateful. He cupped his hands and said, many thanks for eldest senior brother's reminder. Little junior brother's cultivation is more important. I definitely won't cause trouble. Good. Then this elder brother is relieved. Xiang Yang clapped his hands and said, you have this elder brother's message talisman in your hand. That message talisman can send messages over a long distance in my Imperial Thunder sect. If you have any problems with your cultivation method or other matters, you can send a message to this elder brother. This elder brother will rush over as soon as possible. Good. Then, this elder brother will take his leave. Xiang Yang flew into the air. Xiao Hua opened the formation and sent him out. Xiang Yang was still in the air, but he was still somewhat worried. That, little junior brother, you have to cultivate diligently. Last night, Master personally made a trip to the Thunderquake Palace for you. He has high expectations for you. You must not let down Master's painstaking efforts. Little junior brother understands, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Eldest senior brother, go back and tell Master that little junior brother will be able to ask him for guidance in less than 2 years. This elder brother understands. This elder brother will definitely pass this message to Master. Xiang Yang laughed. With a wave of his big sleeve, he flew into the distance. Looking at Xiang Yang's back and the smile in Xiang Yang's eyes just now, Xiao Hua knew that Xiang Yang didn't believe his words at all. Cultivating from Qi refining level 10 to foundation establishment in 2 years? Perhaps even Li Zongbao, who was known as a cultivation genius, couldn't accomplish this, right? But what was the truth? Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders and used his finger to point. A ray of brilliance shot from the command medallion onto the mirror that had just been opened. Seeing the mirror rapidly shrink, Xiao Hua muttered to himself, if I'm happy, I'll give you guys a pleasant surprise next year. But wouldn't doing this be too high profile? It's very inconsistent with my low-key style of conduct. Xiao Hua pinched his chin, somewhat distressed. -7. Chapter 1559. The Eastern Ridge's herb garden was extremely large. However, just as Xiang Yang said, most of it was planted with flame dawn grass. Only the shady side of the mountain peak far away from the cave was planted with other spiritual herbs. However, even if it was only a small portion, it was still many times larger than Shang Huoming's herb garden. Inside, there were many ordinary and unusual spirit grasses of various colors. They were all planted in different areas, filling up one side of the mountain peak. However, with Xiao Hua's many years of experience, these spiritual herbs were all half dead and far from having any value in refining pills. He was afraid that every time the disciples came to the eastern ridge to pick flame dawn grass, they would never look at it. What a pity! Xiao Hua's eyes lit up as he looked at the spiritual herbs. He had seen these spiritual herbs in the Codex of Herbs before. Although Ling Zhongyu from the spiritual grass sect gave him many seeds, those seeds were after all ordinary. Compared to the rare spiritual herbs here, they were not enough. Damn it! After a few days, this young master will familiarize himself with this herb garden. First, this young master will transplant half of the spiritual herbs that this young master does not have in his space. Xiao Hua swallowed his saliva and thought to himself, that's right, with the increase in my cultivation, the space has become a lot bigger. I'm afraid that I can fit the entire eastern ridge into it. These spiritual herbs are still far from enough. If I have time, I have to go to the Qiqiao Pavilion and ask for all the spiritual herbs from the Imperial Thunder sect. Whether the eastern ridge can be planted or not, let's not talk about it first. Let's fill up this young master's space first. In these 2 years, Xiao Hua's space had increased exponentially along with his cultivation. Just as Xiao Hua said, it was much larger than the mountain range of the eastern ridge. However, no matter how big the space was, when Xiao Hua's mind entered it, everything in the space would be reflected in his mind. It was as if the space was his mind. In addition to the fact that his mind could take out anything in the space, Xiao Hua's mind was like the master of the space. Of course, it was more like a mirror-like reflection. There was no feeling of control at all. As for why this was the case, with Xiao Hua's cultivation, he didn't think too much about it. He only felt that this space was much more convenient to use than a storage bag. There was also the growth of the spirit grasses in the space. Naturally, following the growth of Xiao Hua's cultivation, the illumination of the spirit light in tracing light became stronger. The growth of the spirit grasses was also several times faster than before. With this kind of growth speed, Xiao Hua could easily foresee that not to mention 1,000-year-old spirit grasses, even 10,000-year-old spirit grasses would be everywhere in the space in the near future. Xiao Hua first transplanted some spirit grasses, then flew to other places. It took him nearly a day to roughly look through the medicine garden in the eastern ridge. When he returned to his immortal's cave at night, Xiao Hua carefully took out the warning talisman and placed it at the entrance of his immortal's cave. Although the eastern ridge was protected by an extremely powerful array, Xiao Hua still didn't know what dangers lay within. Then, Xiao Hua sat on the jade chair in the immortal's cave and looked around. At this time, looking at the entire immortal's cave again, he felt a sense of familiarity. After all, in the next few years, this would be the place where Xiao Hua cultivated. After he left Shang Huoming, it was only today that he was finally able to have a cave abode of his own. He was finally able to calm his heart and cultivate. That's right, I was in a daze looking at the spirit grasses today, and forgot to take a look at the alchemy room. Xiao Hua suddenly remembered that the alchemy room was the most important place for Xiao Hua's cultivation. However, because he had been refining the fire essence flame crystal for the past 2 years, and there were still some in his meridians, this matter was thrown to the back of his mind. Let's wait for tomorrow. After all, after using the fire essence flame crystal, I'll have to rely on medicinal pills. There are so many spirit grasses here, and there's also the alchemy room. There's no reason to waste them. Xiao Hua thought and clapped his hands. The exquisite Dian pagoda, which was known as the most precious treasure of the Buddhist sect, was taken out from the space. Buddhist sect? What kind of cultivation sect is this? Why haven't I heard of it? It's even a most precious treasure. How could it fall into their hands? I'm afraid that guy is just bluffing. At this time, Xiao Hua's horizons had also widened. Looking at 2 late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, he didn't feel that they were very powerful. Holding the small pagoda in his hand, Xiaohua carefully examined it. This small pagoda looked very ordinary and didn't seem to be any different from what he usually saw. There were even some parts that were damaged and looked very broken. It was far from the appearance of the magic tools and treasures that Xiaohua had seen before. TSK, what kind of Buddhist sect's most precious treasure is this? It can't even compare to the magic tool of the spirit husbandry sect. Xiaohua smacked his lips and gave an extremely low evaluation of the exquisite pagoda. Of course, how could he easily give up on something that even late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivators would have to risk their lives for? When he looked carefully, the exquisite pagoda was divided into 9 layers. Between each layer, there were 4 thin grooves. From top to bottom, there were a total of 36 grooves. Among these grooves, some were filled with things while some were empty. Xiaohua counted carefully. Aside from the top 2 floors which were empty, the bottom 7 floors were all filled with things. However, at the same time, every floor had 1 or 2 empty grooves. There were a total of 17 grooves that had things in them. It was exactly the same as what Mingwei said. What are the things in these grooves? It seems like even the late-stage Foundation establishment realm Mingwei doesn't know. Xiaohua naturally couldn't see anything from the outside. He also released his perception. As expected, his perception didn't see anything abnormal. It was one with the pagoda, and his perception couldn't penetrate it. Xiaohua turned the exquisite pagoda a few times. Isn't there a protrusion here? On the other side of the exquisite pagoda, Xiaohua saw that there was a protrusion on the other side of the groove. It should be just enough for 2 fingers to clamp it. Sure enough, Xiaohua stretched out his thumb and index finger and just happened to clamp it. Could it be that I can pull it out? Xiaohua thought very naturally. However, he didn't have much hope. This exquisite pagoda had been with Mingwei for dozens of years, and he hadn't been able to see through it. There was no reason for him to be able to find the profundity just as it was in his hands. Let's give it a try. Xiaohua used his 2 fingers to pull it out. As expected, the protrusion didn't move at all. It seemed to be one with the small pagoda. Forget it, Xiaohua was still thinking about those green seal scripts and wanted to give up. But, just as he loosened his fingers, he suddenly had an epiphany and suddenly thought of something. Damn it, that damned Mingwei must have also tried this in the past. But the problem is, why didn't he figure it out? There must be something wrong with these protrusions. The more obvious the place, the more likely it is to be the crux of the problem. If this young master can't find this protrusion strange, then I don't need to think about other things. Xiaohua's eyes slightly shrank. He stared straight at the protrusion for the time it took to eat a meal. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua suddenly laughed loudly. He used 2 fingers to clamp the protrusion again and said with a smile, "How am I stupid? If others can't take it out, then it's because they don't have enough strength. What do I have? Strength." As he said this, he took a deep breath and increased the strength of his 2 fingers. Sure enough, as Xiaohua used 60% of his strength, the protrusion really moved. There's hope. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He gradually increased the strength of his fingers, and the protrusion was actually pulled out by him little by little. However, even when Xiaohua used all the strength in his body, the protrusion was still not completely pulled out. It was only pulled out less than 3 inches. How much strength did Xiaohua have now? If he couldn't pull it out, then Mingwei definitely couldn't pull it out either. Although it was only 3 inches, it was already enough. As the 3 inches protrusion was gradually revealed, the smile on Xiaohua's face also gradually became wider. In the end, he really didn't have any strength left and loosened his hand. The protrusion immediately retracted. Xiaohua's face didn't seem to be dispirited. Ha ha ha, this young master said it. Casually collecting some strange things will definitely be beneficial. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out an item from the space. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think it is? It is a piece of gold leaf. Xiaohua didn't know where to use the gold leaf. Needless to say, what Xiaohua pulled out from the protrusion of the exquisite pagoda was a piece of gold leaf. Where should I put it? Xiaohua held the gold leaf in his hand and looked it up and down. After all, there were 19 empty grooves. If he put it in the wrong place, he was afraid that there would be a mistake. Who would have thought that when the gold leaf in Xiao Hua's hand was just close to the exquisite pagoda, an extremely faint brilliance suddenly emitted from a groove in the exquisite pagoda. That brilliance was white, but not white. It was somewhat viscous. When the brilliance shined on the gold leaf, the entire edge of the gold leaf gradually melted. In the blink of an eye, it turned into the appearance of a leaf. This leaf was golden and the veined patterns on it were milky white. Seeing this scene, Xiaohua very naturally placed the leaf into the groove. Sure enough, when the leaf entered the groove, the brilliance retracted back into the exquisite pagoda. On the other side, a protrusion also appeared. Very good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. Immediately after, Xiaohua placed the remaining 7 gold leaves into the pagoda. After he placed the last gold leaf into the pagoda, the entire pagoda was immediately enveloped by a layer of milky white brilliance. Bursts of golden brilliance blossomed from the bottom 4 floors, and within the milky white brilliance, there were countless tiny golden lotuses that gushed out from the space. Those countless golden lotuses blossomed one after another, and an indescribable fragrance filled the entire cave. Xiaohua was just surprised when bursts of Sanskrit chants came out from the exquisite pagoda. The chants resounded in Xiaohua's ears, and his heart felt as if it was filled with the entire world. Tranquility, a piece of tranquility. Peace, a piece of tranquility. When the Sanskrit chants entered his ears, Xiaohua's heart was incomparably tranquil and serene. An experience that he had never experienced before welled up in his heart. Very naturally, Xiaohua sat down cross-legged with the exquisite pagoda still in his hands. His eyes focused on his nose focused on his heart, and his mind entered the space. On one hand, he comprehended the heavenly Tao, and on the other, he silently operated his mental cultivation method. Although the Sanskrit chants could not be heard, Xiaohua's heart seemed to be able to feel the indistinct rhythm of the Sanskrit chants. -7. Chapter 1560. This Sanskrit chanting was indeed effective. It was like a kind of rain that nourished Xiaohua's meridians. Xiaohua's meridians were originally operating the heavenly laws embodiment technique to refine the remaining flames of the fire essence flame crystal. Although this Sanskrit chanting could not increase Xiaohua's refining speed, the amount of flames that Xiaohua could refine had greatly increased. Day after day, night after night, Xiaohua still held the exquisite pagoda in his hand as he sat cross-legged with a solemn appearance. The exquisite pagoda in Xiaohua's hand was still enveloped in Buddhist light. In the golden light of the lower 4 floors, the golden lotus slowly rotated along with the Sanskrit chanting. It actually escaped from the golden light and flew into the space between Xiaohua's eyebrows. Although Xiaohua did not move at all, in the space between his eyebrows, as the golden lotus penetrated, a swastika word actually appeared. This swastika word was faint at first, then gradually became clear. However, this swastika word was not complete. Apart from the bottom and right strokes that were complete, the third stroke was not complete, and the fourth stroke was not complete at all. The entire swastika word only appeared faintly at the beginning when it first appeared. When the golden lotus of the exquisite pagoda had completely gathered together to form the swastika word, an entire 2 months had passed. During this period of time, Xiaohua's body did not move at all, but there was a mysterious fluctuation around his body. The foreign starlight had always been tightly wrapped around him. In his meridians, the remaining flames of the fire essence flame crystal had also been completely refined. Of course, the heavenly laws embodiment technique was still operating, but the amount of true qi that could be refined was already very little. Xiaohua's cultivation was only fixed at the middle of the 11th level of qi refining. The golden lotus of the exquisite pagoda disappeared, and the golden light of the lower 4 floors of the exquisite pagoda also gradually disappeared. Immediately after, the Sanskrit chanting also stopped. The exquisite pagoda returned to its previous ordinary appearance. It moved. Xiaohua's eyelids finally moved slightly, as if with a kind of extreme reluctance. Xiaohua opened his eyes. In an instant, the reverse light in the space began to rotate again, and the foreign starlight suddenly disappeared. Sigh. Xiao Hua's eyes moved slightly, looking at the exquisite pagoda in his hand. There was some eagerness in his eyes as he sighed. This thing is indeed a treasure. But with just a voice, I was brought into a mysterious realm. In this realm, it seems to be filled with tranquility, yet it also seems to be filled with benevolence. It is the exact opposite of I's fire elemental cultivation technique. The heavenly laws embodiment technique and the voice both reinforce and counteract each other. In just 60 days and nights, I was able to push I from the middle stage of the 10th realm to the middle stage of the 11th realm. It is truly marvelous. This Buddhist sect. Which true cultivation sect is it? Judging from the effects of the exquisite derivation pagoda, it wouldn't be any worse than the Imperial Lightning sect. Their ruins? Could it be that their descendants have been wiped out? Just as he was thinking, the medallion in Xiao Hua's bag of holding vibrated. Xiao Hua slapped his hand, and the medallion for the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden appeared. Huh, someone actually sent a message? Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. Immediately after, he pointed his hand, and the token flashed with a faint radiance. For crimson-red messaging talismans flew in from outside the abode. Wow, there are actually 4 of them. Xiao Hua placed the medallion to the side and put the exquisite derivation pagoda into his space. He was just about to reach out for the messaging talismans. At this moment, the swastika symbol between Xiao Hua's eyebrows slightly rotated. Xiao Hua's mind was suddenly pulled into a strange place filled with Buddhist light. In this place, apart from an indomitable Buddha statue, there was nothing else. What is this thing? Xiao Hua felt that this Buddha statue was like the entire world, but also like grass. Although the entire Buddha statue wasn't particularly clear, the Buddha statue had one hand pointing to the heavens and the other pointing to the earth. Its 2 eyes seemed to contain both the heavens and the earth, but also seemed to contain an aura of boundless benevolence. It was very deeply imprinted in Xiao Hua's mind. Just as Xiao Hua was bewildered, a flower suddenly appeared in the motionless Buddha statue's hand. That flower was like a dream, flowing with light and overflowing with color. The Buddha statue's benevolent expression also appeared along with the flower's appearance. It faintly smiled, and the entire space was suddenly filled with heavenly flowers. Xiao Hua's mind was suddenly filled with many things. It was also in an instant that Xiao Hua's eyes lit up again. His mind returned to his body, and his finger was still about to pinch open the messaging talisman, and the swastika symbol between his eyebrows gradually disappeared and disappeared into his skin. Good heavens, Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. What is this thing? Immediately, Xiao Hua didn't accept the messaging talisman and closed his eyes to ponder. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Xiao Hua opened his eyes. His face had an indescribable expression, but his brows were slightly wrinkled. Exquisite Leaf Sutra? This is the Buddhist sect's supreme method of cultivating relics. The sariras cultivated by other dermic formulations were either round balls or multicolored. Only the relic cultivated by this exquisite Leaf Sutra is the image of Buddha. Furthermore, it's golden in color. It's called the Buddha's relic. But what is this relic? Who is Buddha? Xiao Hua was somewhat at a loss. The strangest thing is that this Buddha's relic is formed in the Niwen Palace. Isn't that where the primordial spirit is? Is it the place where the divine sense is born? Right. Speaking of the Niwen Palace, my Niwen Palace doesn't seem to have one. Without the Niwen Palace, how can I cultivate the primordial spirit? How can my divine sense come out? Moreover, this so-called supreme mental cultivation method of the Buddhist sect, why is it somewhat similar to the nameless mnemonic chant that I cultivated in the past? I used the nameless mnemonic chant to cultivate a different perception from divine sense. Could it be that nameless mnemonic chant is also some mental cultivation method of the Buddhist sect? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. No, if it's like the exquisite Leaf Sutra said, this divine ability is Buddhist awareness. Hearing the name, it's different from divine sense. Could it be that I cultivated it wrongly? Forget it, forget it, forget it. Xiao Hua immediately shook his head. In any case, this exquisite Leaf Sutra only has the first 4 layers. The last 5 layers are all incomplete. Maybe in the future, I will wait until I get the last 11 gold leaves from this exquisite derivation pagoda. Hee, this Buddhist sect's flower-picking smile is quite interesting. There are no words at all, but with a smile, the cultivation method will be transmitted to I. It's really mysterious. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua squeezed his hand and the foremost messaging talisman shattered. Xiang Yang's voice came. Little junior brother, you've been in the Eastern Ridge for 30 days. I came to see you on Master's orders. Open the formation. Hee, Master and eldest senior brother really care about me. Xiao Hua smiled and crushed the other messaging talisman. Xiao Hua, I am Jinming. I came to pick the flame dawngrass on the orders of the Thunder Flash Hall's deacon. Please open the formation. Xiao Hua frowned slightly and thought, it's already time to pick the flame dawngrass? Eldest senior brother only said to pick it every year, but he didn't say when. Damn, I don't know when this messaging talisman came. I'm afraid it will delay the matters of the Thunder Flash Hall. The third messaging talisman was still Xiang Yang's voice, but this time it was a bit anxious. Little junior brother, this is the second time I've come. It's already been 50 days. Could it be that you're in seclusion? AI, you've only just entered the sect. You don't even have medicinal pills and other things yet. Why are you in such a hurry to enter seclusion? If you come out, send me a messaging talisman. I'll wait for you for 100 days. If there's no reply, I'll go to the Thunder Flash Hall and ask the deacon to open the restriction. Xiao Hua's heart felt warm. He reached out and took out the messaging talisman that Xiang Yang left behind. He said a few words into the messaging talisman, then flung his hand. The messaging talisman immediately turned into lightning and flew out. The fourth messaging talisman shocked Xiao Hua, but it was also within his expectations. It was Shue Shue. Xiao Hua, where are you now? I'm currently working as an odd job worker in the Thunder Flash Hall's pill refining room. I originally wanted to look for you, but Master said that before Foundation establishment, the disciples of the Thunder Flash Hall and the Thunder Flash Hall can't casually meet. She said she was afraid of damaging her mental state. Master is very good to me. She said that my physique is suitable for cultivating her senior's cultivation technique. However, because I can only receive her guidance after Foundation establishment, I can only stay in the Thunder Flash Hall for the time being. However, Master said that she's a core formation cultivator, so her teaching of disciples is a bit special. Perhaps I can go to the Thunder Flash Hall soon. Of course, Master won't directly instruct me. Some of my Foundation establishment senior martial sisters will instruct me. You have to speed up your cultivation. Don't let me catch up to you. Hee. Master said that if everything goes smoothly, I should be able to reach Foundation establishment within 20 years. What about you? Me. When Xiao Hua saw that the messaging talisman was silent, he curled his lips and muttered to himself, You're amazing just because you reached Foundation establishment in 20 years. I'm afraid I'll be able to reach Foundation establishment next year. However, when he thought about it, Shue Shue was only at the 7th layer of Qi refining. Ordinary cultivators in the Thunder Flash sect would need 24 to 25 years to reach the peak of the 12th layer of Qi refining without any obstacles. Shue Shue using 20 years to reach Foundation establishment could be considered good. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua also took out a messaging talisman and whispered a few words before sending it out. He finally got the chance to cultivate with great difficulty, so he didn't want to be disturbed by anything. Therefore, he didn't say where he was and only said that he was cultivating diligently, hoping to reach Foundation establishment as soon as possible. Presumably, Shue Shue would also understand his thoughts and wouldn't come looking for him. After that, Xiao Hua didn't dare to tarry. He picked up the Eastern Ridge Herb Gardens token and carefully examined it. He flew out of the cave and found some jade boxes in a nearby herb garden. He then hurriedly plucked a sufficient amount of flame dawngrass and used the flight technique to rush to Thunderclap Palace. Xiao Hua's flight technique was extremely fast. From the Eastern Ridge to the Thunder Flash Hall, there weren't any eyesores, so Xiao Hua didn't have to worry. He only used 6 hours to reach the Thunder Flash Hall. When he saw the disciple on duty at the Thunder Flash Hall, Xiao Hua smiled and said, Senior brother, which one of you is Senior Brother Zhiming? The disciple on duty looked up and down at Xiao Hua and asked indifferently, Why are you looking for Junior Brother Zhiming? Oh, This disciple is doing odd jobs at the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. Last time. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, the disciple on duty smiled and said, "Oh, I understand. So you're that odd job worker at the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. What's wrong?" Xiao Hua secretly cursed in his heart and hurriedly asked, "Could it be this disciple has delayed the sect's alchemy?" -7. Chapter 1561. You've got guts. You've only been in my Thunder Shock Palace for 2 months, and you dare to slack off. Every year, junior brother Jinming goes to the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden to pick flame dawn grass and has never made any mistakes. Yet this year, when Grandmaster Jinhan opened the cauldron to refine the clear flower pill, you shut down the formation so that Jinming can't pick the spirit herbs. Tell me, how can Jinming not be punished? "Io," Xiao Hua cried out in shock. "This is my fault. How can I let senior brother Jinming suffer? Please report to the deacon. Senior brother is willing to accept the punishment." The disciple on duty looked at Xiao Hua and nodded. "Fortunately, you're also a responsible man. Let's go, follow I in." As the disciple on duty walked into Thunder Shock Hall, Xiao Hua asked tentatively, "Senior brother, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask." The disciple on duty glanced at him and sneered. "If you should ask, ask. If you shouldn't ask, don't ask." Hee. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. "I just want to ask, although the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden is protected by a formation, but that formation was also set up by the sect's elders. Why don't we ask the elders to break the formation? Or perhaps the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden's token. Is there only one? I can tell you're still hoping for a fluke." The disciple didn't find it strange and rolled his eyes. "The Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden is very far from my Thunder Shock Palace. Every year, only Jinming goes there once when Grandmaster Jinhan is refining the clear flower pill. Normally, no one pays attention to that place, so naturally, there's a spare token. But the strange thing is, when Jinming couldn't enter the medicinal garden for fear of delaying his refining, he came back to look for the spare token. That token was actually not there and mysteriously disappeared." Disappeared? When did it disappear?" Xiao Hua was shocked. That token disappeared, which meant that someone could enter and exit the Eastern Ridge Formation at any time. Then, his own safety was not assured. How could he not be shocked? "How would I know?" The disciple rolled his eyes again. "No one went to the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden for hundreds of years. No one paid attention to that spare token for a long time. Even the deacon doesn't know. So how would I know?" Xiao Hua's eyes turned slightly, and he thought, "Could it be there's something special in the Eastern Ridge? Looks like I'll have to properly search for it when I get back." The disciple continued, "As for asking the elders to break the restriction, only you can think of that. That restriction was set up by the ancestors. Who would dare to disturb them if it wasn't a serious matter?" While they were talking, the two of them arrived in front of a side hall. The disciple told Xiao Hua to wait at the door, and he went in to report. "Damn it, what should we do now?" Xiao Hua stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, slightly frowning. He had only been in the Imperial Thunder sect for less than 100 days, and he had already gotten himself into trouble. Xiao Hua already knew what the clear flower pill was. It was a pill used by Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators to increase their power. Even within the Imperial Thunder sect, there weren't many of them. Every Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator only had a small supply every year. If he delayed the concoction of the clear flower pill, he would most likely delay the cultivation of many of the Thunderclap Palace's Foundation Establishment cultivators. But no one told me when someone would come to the Eastern Ridge to pick the flame dawn grass every year. Xiao Hua felt that he was very innocent. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, the disciple came out from the side hall. Behind the disciple were two other Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators. One of them was a middle-aged man in the late stage of Foundation Establishment Stage. He was tall, had a full beard, and a pair of bell-like eyes. He looked very ferocious. The other one was Jin Feng, whom Xiao Hua met last time. When Xiao Hua saw Jin Feng, a happy expression appeared on his face. He thought to himself, "Wonderful, this Jin Feng should know." Before this thought even appeared in his mind, A trace of anger appeared on Zhang Feng's face. He quickly took half a step forward and berated. Xiao Hua, what did you do? I told you clearly that day. In another 10 days, it will be the day of picking the flame dawn grass. You mustn't be careless. Don't do it yourself. Just wait for your senior brother Jinming to pick it. You can also watch from the side. Wait until next year. You can pick it yourself. There's no need for your senior brother Jinming to go. You, on the other hand, sealed the Eastern Ridge's formation. No matter how Jinming called you, you wouldn't come out. You. Sigh. Fortunately, you knew to come to the Thunder Flash Hall to receive your punishment. Let's see how Deacon Jinfeng will deal with it. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He rolled his eyes and could only sigh. He bowed to the big man and said, Disciple Xiao Hua greets Senior Jinfeng. Disciple only cared about cultivation, but forgot his duty and failed to live up to Deacon's kindness. Deacon, please punish me. So you're Xiao Hua. Jinfeng looked Xiao Hua up and down a few times, but didn't see anything special. He said with a bit of displeasure, The palace lord specially ordered this deacon to arrange a job for you. This Eastern Ridge was also chosen by you. Why did you slack off when you just arrived at the herb garden? I know you chose the Eastern Ridge because you want to be free and wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. But cultivation is cultivation. You can't forget your duty as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. If every disciple was like you, wouldn't my Imperial Thunder Sect be a plate of loose sand? How can my Imperial Thunder Sect establish itself in the country of Shi? I only use you once a year and you make a mistake. Moreover, the Eastern Ridge hasn't. Alas, what should this deacon say about you? Disciple knows his mistake. Xiao Hua was very helpless. He could only bow again. All right, this deacon doesn't care. But you're still a probationary disciple now. In another 10 months, you'll become an official disciple. Your mistake this time. I'm afraid it will affect your assessment. If you don't pass the assessment, you'll still have to leave the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua was very anxious. He stretched out his hand and took out the storage pouch. He said anxiously, Disciple has already picked the flame dawn grass. I don't know if I can atone for my mistake. Atone for your mistake? Jinfeng sneered and said, What kind of mistake did you make? How can you atone for your mistake? As he spoke, he took the storage pouch and took out the jade box. His face revealed a trace of surprise. He looked at Xiao Hua and said, Did you pick this? Yes, disciple picked it. Xiao Hua nodded. Yes, there's a special technique to pick this flame dawn grass. The technique isn't easy to grasp. Seeing that the flame dawn grass you picked was clean and didn't damage the roots, it's pretty good. Zhunfeng's expression eased a bit. Io, Xiao Hua. Jinfeng suddenly cried out from the side. I remember the last time you came, you were still in the middle of the 10th level of qi refining, right? How? Xiao Hua's heart shook. He hurriedly nodded and said, Disciple. Disciple went into secluded cultivation to break through the bottleneck of the 10th level of qi refining. Of course, Disciple remembered Senior Zhunfeng's instructions and wanted to come out before Senior Brother Jinming went to the Eastern Ridge, but, oh, I understand. Jinfeng nodded and said to Jinfeng, The bottleneck from the 10th level of qi refining to the 11th level of qi refining is really difficult. It's the beginning of the birth of divine sense. Xiao Hua wholeheartedly went into secluded cultivation, so it's understandable. Moreover, Xiao Hua actually used 2 months to go from the middle of the 10th level of qi refining to the middle of the 11th level of qi refining. As expected of, the person that the palace master thinks highly of. If he can't become a disciple of our Thunderclap Palace because of this mistake, it'll really be our Thunderclap Palace's loss. Jinfeng also nodded slightly, a trace of surprise flashing through his eyes. He'd heard of someone going from the first level of qi refining to the second level of qi refining in 2 months, but he'd never heard of a disciple going from the 10th level of qi refining to the 11th level of qi refining. This Xiao Hua was the disciple that Thunder Ming Taoist instructed, so how could he not pay attention to him? Zhunfeng nodded slightly, looking at Xiao Hua and saying, Looking at your aptitude, you can be cultivated. However, you must remember that you're now a disciple of the Thunderclap sect, not a disciple of an aristocratic family. When considering anything, you must put the sect's interests first. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua's heart relaxed, and he bowed and said, Since this is your first offense, I won't look into it too deeply. I'll punish you with a year's worth of offerings. Jinfeng waved his hand and returned the storage pouch to Xiao Hua, saying, Let Jinfeng take you to see Martial Uncle Zhen Yi. If he can let this matter pass, you'll be fine, otherwise. Jinfeng didn't finish his words, but Xiao Hua naturally understood. There were only two meanings. If Xiao Hua didn't pass the test in a few months, he'd still be expelled from the mountain. If not, he'd have to ask Thunderming Daoist to come out and talk. Xiao Hua's heart was bitter, but he could only put on a smile, saying, Thank you for your kindness, senior. Soon after, Xiao Hua followed Jinfeng out of the Thunderclap Palace and flew towards a mountain range. Seeing that there was no one around, Jinfeng said, Xiao Hua, picking the blazed dawn grass a few days earlier or later doesn't matter. However, this matter was a bit coincidental. Martial Uncle Zhen Xia, who was supposed to be refining the blazed dawn pill, suddenly disappeared, and Martial Uncle Zhen Yi was temporarily left behind by the palace master to refine the blazed dawn pill. Martial Uncle Zhen Yi originally wanted to go on a trip, so of course he wasn't willing. On top of that, the blazed dawn grass wasn't delivered in time, so he flew into a rage. Jin Ming was also punished with a year's worth of offerings. When you arrive at Martial Uncle Zhen Yi's Immortal's Cave, you must properly apologize. If this matter isn't settled, it'll be really bad for you. Seeing that Jinfeng didn't mention anything about the date of picking the blazed dawn grass, Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. This thing was just empty words. Just now, he didn't mention it in front of Jinfeng, so there was no need to mention it now. However, Xiao Hua had another plan in his heart. None of the things in Zhan Xia's storage pouch were damaged. I took them all. This guy is actually a pill master, so there must be some pill recipes in there. I'm at the 11th layer of qi refining, and I'm worried about not having any pills to take. When I go back, I'll take a careful look. After flying for 2 hours, they arrived at a place with beautiful mountains and limpid waters. Jinfeng didn't come any closer, so he sent out a summoning talisman. A moment later, a boy around the 4th layer of qi refining flew out from the mountainside. Looking at the two of them, he laughed and said, Which one of you is senior martial brother Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua took a step forward and cupped his hands, saying, I am. Senior martial brother Xiao, please follow I. This senior doesn't need to come. Jinfeng looked at Xiao Hua, nodded slightly, then turned around and left. Senior martial brother Xiao, please. The boy stood up and led the way, leading Xiao Hua into the Immortal's Cave. -7. Chapter 1562. After entering the Immortal's Cave, Xiao Hua looked around. Zhen Ye's Immortal's Cave was different from Wu Hin's Immortal's Cave. It was much larger, and there were many mountain paths leading to different places. There were also quite a few qi condensation disciples walking about. It was very lively. The boy leading the way didn't stop in the slightest. He brought Xiao Hua through several Immortal's Caves until they arrived at the innermost alchemy room. Wait here. The boy pointed with his hand and entered the alchemy room. Yes, I understand. Xiao Hua respectfully stood outside the alchemy room, waiting for the summons. However, a moment after the disciple entered, a divine sense swept over Xiao Hua's body. After that, no one paid attention to Xiao Hua. Not only did the disciple not come out, but the disciples who came in and out of the alchemy room also didn't look at Xiao Hua. After a moment, Xiao Hua knew what was going on. He sighed and didn't move. His mind entered the space and began to comprehend the heavenly Tao. In his meridians, the heavenly reflection technique was also operating. Xiao Hua actually began to cultivate. He was really unwilling to let such a good time go to waste. Inside the alchemy room, an old man with white hair and a beard was sitting cross-legged. His face was grim. In front of him was an earth fire with an alchemy furnace above it. Around the furnace, there were 6 disciples sitting cross-legged, holding different things in their hands. Some were gourds, some were fans, some were talismans, and there were also jade boxes and jade bottles. The disciple who led Xiao Hua in was sitting cross-legged behind the old man, holding a jade tray in his hand. Fire. The old man was Zhen Yi. He observed the earth fire with his divine sense and suddenly shouted in a low voice. When the disciple holding the gourd heard this, he hurriedly raised the gourd and formed seals with his hands. From the gourd, several strands of samadhi true fire flew out and rushed into the earth fire. With a whoosh, the earth fire suddenly became smaller and turned into a purple-red color. Zhang Yi formed seals with his hands and struck the alchemy furnace in succession. The alchemy furnace actually emitted a buzzing sound and almost floated up. Sigh. Zhang Ye's expression changed slightly as he exclaimed, "We have the upper hand." The disciple holding the fan was an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. When he heard this, he immediately activated his magic power and raised the fan in his hand to fan the pill furnace. The fan was clearly a magic tool. As he waved it, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was sucked into the fan. Then, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was fanned out by the fan. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was now several times denser than before. When the dense heaven and earth spirit chi was fanned into the earth fire, the purplish-red earth fire flickered a few times and became smaller. The red color was less, and the purple color was more. The pill furnace shook even more violently. Zhang Ye's expression relaxed slightly. He cast a few spells, and the pill furnace floated up from the earth fire. But at this moment, Zhang Ye's expression changed greatly. His tightly shut eyes slightly opened. He formed seals with his left hand and slapped it on his chest. Before Zhang Ye's left hand left his chest, a wisp of purple true samadhi fire was spat out from his mouth and hit the pill furnace. Woo! The earth fire that was burning around the pill furnace suddenly changed again, turning into a purple color. The violently shaking pill furnace gradually stabilized under the purple true samadhi fire and slowly fell down. Sigh. Zhang Ye's eyes gazed at the true samadhi fire that was mixed with many red flames and sighed again. The cultivator holding the fan in his hand kept the fan. Seeing that the pill furnace had stabilized, he whispered, "Master, you don't have to be too obsessed. How many cultivators in our country if she can refine the true samadhi fire to be as pure as yours? I'm afraid that an overly pure true samadhi fire doesn't exist in our cultivation world." Zhenqing, Master naturally knows what you're saying, but without the extremely pure true samadhi fire, it's impossible to refine this clear flower pill to the highest grade. Master has refined so many clear flower pills, but at most they're high grade. Master is unwilling to accept this. Actually, Master can consider from other aspects. For example, the age of the Shaoyin grass, the weight of the clear stream fruit, etc. Zhang Ye's face was full of displeasure. He waved his hand. How can Master not know these things? He, disciple naturally knows. Master knows, disciple. All right, I know what you're thinking. You've also worked hard. As a foundation establishment cultivator, you still have to accompany Master to refine pills. You should go back. Zhang Yi smiled. This clear flower pill will be refined in another 7 days. There shouldn't be any problems. Master, disciple rarely has the chance to accompany you. Let's stay a little longer. Zhenqing called over the boy who brought Xiaohua in and had him put away the fan. He then sat behind Zhang Yi. If not for senior brother Zhen Xie's sudden disappearance, disciple wouldn't have the chance to accompany Master to refine pills. However, to have Master refine clear flower pills with gold core stage cultivation is a waste of talent. It can't be said to be a waste of talent. When Master was at Foundation Establishment, I also refined clear flower pills many times. Zheng Yi said with a smile. However, Palace Lord's obstruction has delayed a very important matter of Master's. Palace Lord, there's no other way. If you don't take action, who can accept the task of refining clear flower pills? Zhenqing smiled apologetically. I don't know where senior brother Zhenxie went. Every year he has to refine clear flower pills. Why did he make a mistake this year? Oh, this. Zheng Yi looked at the boys around him and transmitted his voice. According to Palace Lord, 2 months ago, Zhang Xie's life tablet was already broken. It was discovered by the disciple on duty. The palace only sent people to look for clues, but forgot about him refining clear flower pills. Zhenqing's face was filled with shock. He also transmitted his voice. Where did this happen? How would Master know? Zhang Yi shook his head slightly. Jinqing didn't pursue the matter. He looked outside the alchemy room and frowned. What is the disciple outside the alchemy room doing? Humph. A disciple who just entered my Imperial Thunder sect this year is guarding the eastern ridge's blazed dawn grass. A disciple from Lightning Hall went to pick blazed dawn grass, but this guy actually neglected his duty and didn't open the array so that the disciple couldn't enter, delaying Master's refining of clear flower pills. He had no choice but to pick blazed dawn grass from other places. The quality of the blazed dawn grass from other places isn't good enough. I'm afraid that the clear flower pills Master will refine this time can only be mid-grade. Zhen Yi swept his divine sense and sneered. This kind of aristocratic family's disciple must be self-centered and never put the interests of the sect in his heart. If I don't teach him a lesson, he'll think that the Imperial Thunder sect is an aristocratic family. This guy must be working hard. He actually has to cultivate after being punished here? Humph, Zhen Yi coldly snorted. Xiao Hua's heart was greatly shaken, as if a large hand had pulled his mind out of the space. Moreover, the true qi in his meridians was also in chaos, wanting to rush everywhere. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. Just as he was about to calm his mind and straighten out his true qi, an enormous pressure came out from the pill room and enveloped his head. As early as 2 years ago, on Jinhua Mountain, the pressure of Fu Yumbua and Xiu Mingwei, 2 Foundation Establishment stage cultivators, collided. To him, it was a perilous situation. Today, how could the pressure of a gold core stage cultivator not cause him to tremble in fear? In an instant, the true qi in Xiao Hua's meridians couldn't move, as if it had solidified. His body also felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on him, and large beads of sweat seeped out from his forehead. Gold core stage cultivator. Xiao Hua powerlessly shouted in his heart. As if to teach Xiao Hua a lesson, the pressure was withdrawn in an instant, and the true qi in Xiao Hua's meridians began to peacefully circulate again. Xiao Hua wiped the sweat from his forehead and bowed respectfully. Many thanks to martial ancestor. Humph, another cold snort, and then no other sound was heard. This time, Xiao Hua didn't dare to cultivate anymore, and only stood respectfully. Another 7 days and 7 nights passed, and only a light scolding sound could be heard from the pill room. A rich medicinal fragrance rushed out from the pill room, and after a moment, the pill room's door opened, and Zhen Yi walked out from the pill room. Xiao Hua hurriedly respectfully saluted and said, "Disciple Xiao Hua greets martial ancestor." Who would have thought that Zhen Yi didn't even look at him, and just walked away? Jinqing and the others also took their own things and followed behind Zhen Yi. Xiao Hua looked at everyone's backs, and somewhat scratched his head, not knowing whether he should follow or not. "Why aren't you coming over?" A voice entered his ears, and it sounded very unfamiliar. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, and hurriedly followed behind everyone. The group of people didn't walk too far, and arrived at a large hall. Each of the children placed their things in various places in the hall, and then immediately dispersed, leaving only Zhen Yi and Jinqing, master and disciple, sitting down. Xiao Hua also learned his lesson, and didn't dare to enter the hall, and only quietly waited outside. Inside the hall, Zhen Yi drank a cup of spiritual tea and ate 2 spiritual fruits, then raised his head and looked at Xiao Hua outside the hall. "Master, you've already made this little guy wait for 10 days. Looking at this little guy's appearance, he's able to keep his composure and has some bearing. It's better to call him in and send him away. It didn't take long anyway." Humph. Zhen Yi glanced at Jinqing. "You're the only one with a soft heart. How many times have I told you that the most important thing in the cultivation world is a soft heart?" "Yes, disciple understands." Jinqing smiled apologetically, then raised his head and said, "Disciple outside, come in." When Xiao Hua heard this voice, he hurriedly ran into the hall, looked at the two, and bowed. Disciple Xiao Hua greets the 2 seniors. "And whose disciple are you?" Zhen Yi asked very calmly. Reporting to martial ancestor, disciple is a helpless disciple of the myriad Thunder Valley. Xiao Hua naturally knew that this unfathomable cultivator was the Gold Core Realm Zhen Yi, and very respectfully replied, "Helpless?" Zhen Yi frowned slightly and said curiously, "This brat's eyesight is really not ordinary." That disciple from before made him lose face, and this newly accepted disciple is still so useless. Hearing Zhang Ye's words, Xiao Hua was slightly angered in his heart. It wasn't a big deal for Zhang Yi to say that he was a good-for-nothing. Over the past few years, he had suffered more than that. However, when he heard Zhang Yi bad-mouthing Xiang Yang, Xiao Hua couldn't help but reply, "This disciple made a mistake. It is this disciple's fault. There's no reason for me to implicate senior martial brother and make him a laughingstock." -7. Chapter 1563. Huh. What? Don't tell me I said he was unworthy? Zhang Yi never expected Xiao Hua to talk back. He was so angry that he almost laughed. Martial ancestor, this disciple doesn't dare to agree. Xiao Hua stiffened his neck and said, "My 10,000 Thunder Valley was able to produce such a benevolent and filial disciple. Even someone like this disciple who just entered 10,000 Thunder Valley would have a face full of glory. How did I become the person that martial ancestor said would lose face for the sect?" Benevolent and filial? Zhang Yi sneered. If he wasn't benevolent and filial, I'm afraid he'd already be in the late stage of foundation establishment. At the very least, he'd be in the middle stage of foundation establishment. How could he be like this? He's only in the early stage of foundation establishment, yet he's being ridiculed by others every day? If this isn't losing face, then what is? Others ridiculing me is because they have eyes but fail to see. Xiao Hua retorted sarcastically, if it wasn't for senior brother, my 10,000 Thunder Valley would have already changed hands. I'm afraid this disciple wouldn't have been able to enter Master's sect. I wouldn't have been able to listen to Master's teachings. Because of this disciple wanted to thank senior brother at that time. I couldn't let senior brother be ridiculed by others. Have eyes but fail to see? Zhang Yi slapped the table and stood up. He released a wave of pressure. This pressure was several times stronger than before. Xiao Hua felt as if he was frozen in a hard rock. He couldn't move at all. However, the fear that came from the bottom of his heart made his whole body tremble non-stop. "Master," Zhenqing said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua is still a child. You don't have any reason to lower yourself to his level." "Humph, how can this old man lower himself to his level?" Zhang Yi snorted and sat back in his chair. He glared at Zhenqing and said, "This old man is angry that the Imperial Thunder Sect's recruitment of disciples is getting worse and worse. How can this kind of soft-hearted disciple be accepted? I'm afraid that in the future, Xuanyan School, Shanghua Sect, and Qiqiao Sect will gnaw on him until not even his bones remain." "Hee, master. This disciple feels that Xiao Hua's words aren't without reason," Zhenqing said with a smile. "At least, Xiang Yang's heart puts the sect first. He's much better than those traitorous disciples from influential families." "Humph, I knew you would say that." Zhang Yi snorted again and withdrew his pressure. Xiao Hua immediately felt much more relaxed and didn't dare to say anything else. "Let this old man ask you, which clan's disciple are you?" Zhang Yi looked at Xiao Hua and asked. "Reporting to Grandmaster, this disciple is a loose cultivator." Xiao Hua spoke the truth. "What? A rogue cultivator?" Not only did Zhang Ye's expression change, even Zhenqing's brows furrowed. It's very rare for a rogue cultivator to reach the 11th level of qi refining. Zhang Yi sneered. Xiao Hua naturally knew what they were talking about. After thinking for a moment, he cupped his hands and said, "Disciple has something to say. If it's inappropriate, I hope Grandmaster can forgive me." "Speak." Just now, Grandmaster said that my eldest senior brother is merciful and doesn't treat raising his cultivation as his top priority. He's purposely throwing away my master's face. But why are we, rogue cultivators, despised by others for raising our cultivation by hook or by crook? Of course it's important to raise your cultivation, but you can't be unscrupulous. Rogue cultivators don't care about etiquette and rob others. Of course it's despised by our cultivation sects. Zhang Yi still sneered. Rogue cultivators don't have medicinal pills or cultivation methods. If they don't rely on robbing, what can they rely on to raise their cultivation? Xiao Hua said, "Besides, since Grandmaster said that we can't be unscrupulous, why is it that when my master wasn't in Myriad Thunder Valley, someone coveted Myriad Thunder Valley? Is that a very good method? Grandmaster didn't say that other people's methods were inappropriate, but why did he say that my senior brother who was robbed was a disgrace? This, in an instant, Zhenyi was really stumped by this question. His face was a little green and red. Haha, master, this brat is really interesting. You were just joking with him, but he actually said so much. Jinqing hurriedly said with a loud laugh. Zhenyi stared blankly, but soon after, he also laughed loudly. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, "You brat, go back and tell this to your helpless master. What are you doing in front of this old man for?" When Xiaohua heard this, his heart relaxed greatly. He cupped his hands and said, "Disciple saw that Grandmaster is perceptive to the smallest detail, so I said it in front of Grandmaster. If Disciple said it in front of Master, I would have been kicked out long ago." Perceptive to the smallest detail? Zheng Ye's expression changed again. He said, "Don't flatter me. If you're in the wrong, just say it yourself." Yes, Disciple doesn't dare quibble. Disciple was indeed in the wrong. Xiaohua's expression also became serious. He took out his storage pouch and said, "Disciple picked the blazed dawn grass and brought it here to receive Grandmaster's punishment." Jinqing glanced at Zhenyi, and with a wave of his hand, the storage pouch flew into his hand. Zhenyi looked at Xiaohua and asked, "What punishment did Bright Thunderhall give you?" "Disciple is punished with a year's worth of offerings." Xiaohua said honestly, "Humph, only a year's worth of offerings." Zhenyi sneered. "How much can a year's worth of offerings be?" "Disciples of aristocratic families who can enter my Imperial Thunder sect." Speaking up to here, Zhenyi suddenly remembered that Xiaohua was a loose cultivator. This year's worth of offerings was probably quite a lot for him. "Huh, Xiaohua, did you pick this blazed dawn grass yourself?" Jinqing opened the storage pouch and took out a jade box to look, and asked with some surprise. "Yes, Disciple personally picked it." Xiaohua's eyes turned slightly as he replied, "Master, please take a look." Jinqing gave the jade box to Zhenyi and said, "This blazed dawn grass was picked at just the right time. It didn't hurt the roots at all. It's much stronger than the blazed dawn grass that Disciple saw just now. And it's really not bad." Zhenyi nodded after looking at it. He looked at Xiaohua and said, "This little loose cultivator's explanation is much better than the vast majority of disciples of aristocratic families. Hee, I'm afraid it's better than many of my Imperial Thunder sect's herb-growing children." "What do you mean?" Zhenyi looked at Jinqing and asked. Jinqing transmitted a few words to Zhenyi. Zhenyi frowned and thought for a moment, then slightly nodded. He then said to Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, you made a mistake this time and delayed the refining of my Thunderclap Palace's Minghua pill. This crime isn't light. Since you just entered my Imperial Thunder sect and this is your first offense, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself." "Many thanks, Grandmaster." Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and thanked him. "Don't thank me. It won't be too late to thank me after I finish speaking." Zhenyi waved his hand and said, "I saw that your method of picking flame dawn grass was very brilliant. You should have experience in cultivating spirit herbs. I wonder if you've stayed in a pill refining room before?" "Disciple has some experience." Xiaohua nodded. "And do you have a fire attribute physique?" "Yes, Disciple has a fire attribute." "Good, then you'll be a pill refining child in my pill refining room for a year." "That's enough." Zhenyi clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Ah, this." Xiaohua was slightly stunned. "Why aren't you agreeing?" Zhenqing's voice sounded once more. "Master has seen your herb-gathering skills, and he appreciates your talent. If you agree and perform well this year, Master might be overjoyed. Even if he doesn't accept you as his disciple, it would still be a blessing for you to learn how to concoct pills." "That's right. Just now Master said that if your aptitude is good, after you reach Foundation Establishment, he can even consider passing on the true Samadhi fire technique to you." Hearing this, Xiaohua understood. To an ordinary disciple, how could this be considered a punishment? It was simply a reward, an incomparable reward. However, did Xiaohua lack these things? It wasn't like he didn't know how to refine medicinal pills or the true Samadhi fire technique. What he lacked now was time, an opportunity to cultivate in seclusion. That day, Jade Archive Hall's Jinliang, wanted to delay Xiao Hua's registration, delaying him for a year. Xiao Hua could angrily teach him a lesson, so how could he waste a year in Zhang Ye's pill refining room? Although Jinqing wanted to help him with good intentions, but Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then very apologetically smiled at Jinqing. He then bowed to Zhen Yi and said, "Many thanks for Grandmaster's good intentions. Disciple is willing to redeem himself. Unfortunately, Disciple only knows how to grow spirit herbs and isn't familiar with pill refining. If Disciple delays Grandmaster's pill refining, Disciple can't bear the responsibility. Grandmaster, please reconsider." Jin Yi and Zhen Qing's expressions changed slightly. What kind of person was Zhen Qing? He had only seen Xiao Hua protecting Xiang Yang and felt pity in his heart. Although the method of harvesting was good, it was only an excuse. Since Xiao Hua didn't care about this kind of opportunity, how could he say another word? Very good. Zhen Yi sneered. He thought for a moment and said, "This old man originally made an appointment with an old friend to look for something. However, because your blazed dawn grass didn't arrive, the journey was delayed. At this time, they should have already left. This thing is very important to this old man. This old man also waited for many years to get the news. Since this time was delayed because of you, help this old man find another one." As he spoke, he waved his hand and a jade slip flew into Xiao Hua's hand. This? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He looked at the jade slip and said, "Disciple. How can Disciple look at this thing? Besides, how can Disciple find something that Grandmaster cares about? This won't do, that won't do. Do you want to receive punishment or not?" Zhen Yi sneered. "Besides, this old man only asked you to look for information about something, not for you to look for it. You used to be a loose cultivator, so you should have some connections to inquire about it. Moreover, this old man isn't asking you to look for it right now. You only need to find the information within 10 years. 10 years? That long? Xiao Hua was stunned. 10 years is too short? Then 20 years it is, Zhen Yi said. If you can't find the information within 20 years, this old man can still deal with you when the time comes. Damn it, I might as well be his pill concoction boy for a year. Xiao Hua secretly complained in his heart. However, since things had already reached this point, how could he still go back? Then, these few years of Disciples' Foundation establishment realm, do they count? Xiao Hua began to calculate with his fingers. Nonsense, of course they count. Zhen Yi glared at him. He knew what Xiao Hua was thinking and said, "You don't have divine sense right now, so you can ask your eldest senior brother to help you look." He impatiently came to this old man's immortal's cave several times already. Just ask him to tell you. As he spoke, he waved his hand again and said, "You can go now. Leave the storage pouch here and let your master give you another one. This can also be considered a punishment. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it." -7. Chapter 1564. Xiao Hua had no choice but to bow and leave. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, Jinqing laughed and said, "This myriad Thunder Valley, why does it only recruit such an unreliable disciple? First it was Xiang Yang, then Xiao Hua, and now there's no choice. Tiske, what a rotten porridge." Soon after, Jinqing said softly, "It's fine if Master didn't punish such an untactful disciple, but why did you give him the jade slip? Let him help Master find it? Even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms. I'm afraid he still doesn't have that ability." Zhen Yi shook his head. Anyway, the bright flower pill has already been refined. Xiao Hua also hurried over to accept his punishment. In addition, Lightning Thunder Hall has already punished him with a year's worth of daily offerings. Not to mention that I'm a gold core stage grandmaster. Even you, a foundation establishment stage martial uncle, can't really punish him? That's true, but he's a new disciple of Lightning Thunder Palace. He's only been here for 2 months. I'm afraid he hasn't even explored the entire Lightning Thunder Palace. This careless mistake is understandable. Jinqing nodded. The reason why he interceded for Xiao Hua before was also based on this. But this bastard has really delayed me for these 10 days. Zhen Yi was somewhat angry. Although I can't tell if the information about that thing is true or false, it's still an opportunity. This old man is so tired that I can't go with him. This old man is unwilling. Master gave him the jade slip. Jinqing seemed to understand something. And, don't forget, Xiaohua is a loose cultivator. How many loose cultivators have you seen in the middle of the 11th layer of qi refining? Zhenyi sneered. In the country of Xi, or in the entire cultivation world, how many loose cultivators above the 11th layer of qi refining are there? Jinqing shook his head. Although there are many loose cultivators, most of them have shallow cultivation bases. Even foundation establishment and gold core loose cultivators live in seclusion in spirit veins deep in the mountains and cultivate bitterly. Disciple really hasn't seen many loose cultivators at the 11th layer of qi refining. Moreover, he's a loose cultivator who took spirit herbs to retain his looks. Zhenyi smiled meaningfully and said, do you think that if Xiaohua didn't have some tricks up his sleeves in the state of Xi, and didn't have a source of information, he would be able to get enough medicinal pills, spirit herbs, and spirit stones to help him reach the 11th level of qi refining? I understand. Jinqing smiled and said, Master gave him the jade slip only to let him find information about that thing. He didn't really let him search for it. With his previous methods as a rogue cultivator, he might really be able to find it. That's right. Zhenyi looked outside the cave with a kind smile on his face. However, he had another explanation in his heart. This old man is giving you a way out, but you still don't know how to take it. Then this old man can only reach out and punish him. If I don't make you suffer a little, how can I feel at ease in my heart? Xiaohua, don't think that it's just a simple piece of news. Moreover, it's a 20-year time limit. If you don't look for him, if you don't give this old man any news within 20 years, even if this old man doesn't find trouble with you, do you think your cultivation won't be affected? This kind of punishment, isn't it much more interesting than punishing you for a year? How could Xiaohua, who had left Jinye's immortal's cave, know that there was so much karma involved? Seeing his eldest senior brother Xiang Yang's figure waiting not far from the cave, his heart felt warm. When Xiang Yang saw Xiaohua come out, he didn't dare to go too close. He waved his hand from afar, hinting for Xiaohua to come over. When Xiaohua arrived in front of him, Xiang Yang looked up at the cave behind Xiaohua and said in a low voice, How is it? Martial Uncle Zhenyi didn't make things difficult for you, right? Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, How could that be? He's an Oris core stage grandmaster. There's no reason for him to make things difficult for me, right? That's good, that's good. Xiang Yang rubbed his hands and pulled Xiaohua's hand, saying, Let's hurry back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Master is also worried there. Eldest senior brother, how many days have you been waiting here? Xiaohua smiled and flew up. I've been waiting for you for a few days. Xiang Yang said with a smile. When I received your message, I immediately notified Master. However, when I arrived at Eastern Ridge, the formation was still sealed, but my message was already gone. Therefore, I went to Thunder Flash Hall. Alas, I was also careless. If I had asked clearly earlier, it would have been better. I made you bear the blame for no reason. It's okay. It's okay. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand. When I heard Jinfeng's words, I hurried here. However, Martial Uncle Zhenyi is a senior, and his temper can't be said to be good or bad. Therefore, I didn't dare to rashly ask for an audience. Moreover, I saw that you didn't come out for many days. Presumably, you were waiting inside. The longer you wait, the more Martial Uncle Zhenyi's anger will dissipate. That's more beneficial for you. I also didn't expect that you would be able to come out today. Only now did Xiang Yang notice Xiaohua's cultivation. He was shocked and said, Little junior brother, you are actually already in the middle of the 11th level of aura refining? I'll take advantage of senior brother's auspicious words. Xiaohua said with a smile. As soon as I entered the Immortal's cave in the eastern mountain range, I had a feeling in my heart and went into seclusion to cultivate. If it wasn't for the fact that I was at a critical juncture, how could I not open the spell formation and delay the eastern mountain range's medicinal gardens mission? Xiang Yang clapped his hands and said, I only thought that little junior brother would be cultivating in seclusion, but I didn't expect little junior brother to progress so quickly. If Master knew, he'd definitely be very happy. As he said this, Xiangyang was about to send a summoning talisman. Xiaohua hurriedly stopped him and said, "Don't, eldest senior brother. Wait until you see Master. At least there'll be a pleasant surprise." Hee, that's true. Xiangyang looked at Xiaohua happily, as if he was looking at a sensible nephew. Xiaohua originally wanted to let Xiangyang look at the things in the jade slip, but on second thought, this thing was something that even Zhanyi coveted. It was certainly no small matter, and information about it would definitely be extremely difficult to find out. If Xiangyang or Zhanyi were to find out about this, they would most likely be powerless and anxious. Rather than letting them know, it would be better not to let them know. There was a time limit of 20 years, so it wouldn't be too late to wait until he reached the Foundation establishment realm. After flying with Xiangyang for a while, Xiaohua changed directions and had Xiangyang accompany him to the Thunder-Shocking Palace. When Jinfeng heard that Zhanyi didn't pursue the matter too much, he was overjoyed. To be honest, this matter was originally his fault. Now that Xiaohua was fine, his heart could be considered relaxed. As for Xiaohua's other request, he didn't even think about it before agreeing. Xiaohua's request was very reasonable, and that was to bring some spiritual plant seeds from the Thunder-Shocking Palace to the Eastern Mountain Range's medicinal garden. He wanted to test which seeds could survive in the Eastern Mountain Range, and which seeds couldn't. Not to mention Jinfeng, even Xiangyang didn't have any doubts. He only thought that Xiaohua wanted to make up for his mistake by going first. When Xiaohua came out with a lot of seeds from the Thunder-Shocking Palace, Xiangyang smiled and said, "Little junior brother, your performance was good enough, but wasn't this too much? Apart from the extremely rare spiritual plants, you took a portion of the vast majority of seeds. The spiritual energy of the Eastern Mountain Range is very special. So many seeds can't grow." Who knows? Maybe little brother's character is good? Xiaohua put away the storage pouch and said, "Moreover, there are a lot of seeds in the Thunder-Shocking Palace, so little brother taking a few isn't much at all, right?" Xiangyang only thought that Xiaohua had a childish character, so he didn't say anything more. He brought Xiaohua to Jinwu's cave in the Myriad Thunder Valley. When they arrived in front of Jinwu's cave and landed, the mountain ape scuttled out of the mountain forest. It was holding a bloody goat-like beast in its hand, standing very respectfully by the side of the road. When it saw Xiangyang deliver the beast in front of him, Xiangyang waved his hand and pointed to a valley not far away. The mountain ape understood and knew that he should go there to barbecue. However, the mountain ape just didn't leave, bowing its head and cupping its hands. Seeing the beast's blood drip to the ground along with the mountain ape's cupped hands, Xiangyang helplessly patted his storage pouch and took out a pill and threw it to the mountain ape. The mountain ape happily caught it with its mouth. Then, with a long howl, it rushed towards the valley. Seeing the mountain ape's actions, Xiaohua's heart moved. He had a set of soul-suppressing magic tools for the fire ape in his space. If he said that he didn't want to subdue the fire ape, that would be pure nonsense. But how would he subdue it? "Xiaohua," a helpless voice called out from inside the cave. "Master." Disciple Xiaohua kowtows in salute to Master. Xiaohua stood at the door and said very respectfully, "Damn it, what kind of etiquette is this?" Helplessly said with a grin. "Could it be that after cultivating to the 11th layer of qi refining, you've become so refined for no reason?" Joy could be heard in Helplessly's voice. Where was the slightest trace of anger? Xiaohua smiled and looked at Xiangyang, whose face was also full of smiles, then walked in together. Needless to say, Zhuo Minghui and Yin Qinglian were also inside the cave. As soon as Yin Qinglian saw Xiaohua, she said with a smile, "Congratulations, little junior brother, for setting foot into the 11th layer of qi refining. If nothing unexpected happens, little junior brother will be able to set foot into foundation building in another 2 years. Even if you're not the youngest person to reach foundation building in our Imperial Thunder sect, you'll definitely be able to rank in the top 100. Ha ha ha, Helplessly listened, and his face became even happier. He stroked his beard and said, "At the very least, in the past 500 years, among the cultivators that have set foot into foundation building in our thunderous Thunder Palace, Xiaohua can rank in the top 10. Congratulations to Master for having discerning eyes and accepting little junior brother into our Myriad Thunder Valley." Xiang Yang cupped his hands and said, "Ha ha ha," helplessly laughed proudly. Zhuo Minghui and the others also looked on happily. "Io, that's right, little junior brother. These are your offerings for the past 2 months." Xiang Yang patted his storage pouch and took out a few spirit stones and a bottle of medicinal pills. He said with a smile, "Now that you're about to break through to the 12th layer of qi refining, these things can also be used. Wasn't the thunderous Thunder Hall punished?" Xiao Hua looked at these medicinal pills and other things and said with a bit of confusion, "What? Punished?" Helplessly's face darkened. "Hee, it's like this, master." Xiang Yang explained the situation and finally said, "These tributes were collected by this disciple on behalf of little junior brother. The tributes for the year of punishment should be counted from this month onwards. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. -7. Chapter 1565. What's going on? Xiao Hua was the hope of myriad Thunder Valley. How could he let Xiao Hua be wronged? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned, but he soon understood that Xiang Yang didn't tell him about his punishment. And he didn't even tell him about the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden. Just as Xiao Hua was about to speak, Xiang Yang rushed to say with an apologetic smile, "Master, it's like this." "Like what?" Xiao Hua glanced at Xiang Yang helplessly. "You brat. You acted on your own again." Yes, I hope Master can understand." Xiang Yang explained the matter, then finally said, "This matter isn't much." So disciple didn't report it to Master, only saying that little junior brother was cultivating in seclusion. "Damn it." Xiao Hua scolded with a smile. "This brat is indeed cultivating in seclusion, you're right." Seeing Xiao Hua happy, Xiang Yang was also happy. He said, "Grandmaster Zhen Yi didn't make things difficult for little junior brother. So isn't this matter over? What's a year's worth? It can't compare to little junior brother stepping into the 11th layer of aura refining in 2 months. Of course." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at him, then asked, "Grandmaster Zhen Yi really didn't make things difficult for you? He's a bit of a vengeful person." "No. How could he make things difficult for disciple?" Xiao Hua shook his head with a smile. "Disciple just entered the sect. Isn't it normal to make some mistakes occasionally? That's good." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at Zhuo Minghui, then said, "Your master's wife originally wanted to give you a meeting gift. She found medicinal pills with great difficulty from a senior sister in Mythical Thunder Palace, wanting you to use them to break through to the 11th layer of aura refining. But you made your master's wife work for nothing." "Thank you for your concern, master's wife." Xiao Hua's heart warmed, and he stepped forward to bow and thank her. "Child, why are you still being so polite?" Zhuo Minghui waved her hand to help Xiao Hua up, then said, "You're the only child in Myriad Thunder Valley. If we don't think of you, who else can we think of?" Xiao Hua sweated, somewhat embarrassed. No matter what, he was 25 years old, but in their mouths, he was actually a child. But when he thought about it, they said he was over 100 years old. If he wasn't a child, then what was he? This vitality assimilation pill was given to 10th layer qi refining disciples by the Imperial Thunder sect. "It's not suitable for you now." A hint of awkwardness flashed across Zhuo Minghui's eyes. Then, she smiled and said, "After a few days, Mistress will go to distant Thunder Palace and see if they have any extra energy gathering pills." Absorption pill? Soul gathering pill? Xiao Hua inwardly muttered, "Motherfucker, it's really good to have a sect. I only know about the Peiyuan pill, but who would have thought that they have different pills for each level? Moreover, they even say that there are examples." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Master's wife, you can just give the absorption pill to disciple. Don't forget, your disciple is a rogue cultivator and has never taken this soul gathering pill before. Taking it now will have some effect." "This?" Zhuo Minghui turned around helplessly. He waved his hand helplessly and said, "Give it to him. He has more experience in taking medicinal pills than we do. Don't worry about him." Zhuo Minghui clapped her hand and took out 3 jade bottles from her storage bag. She said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua, you haven't taken this medicinal pill before. Don't be in a hurry to take a complete one. First, Zhuo Minghui actually told Xiaohua the taboo of taking the absorption pill bit by bit. Xiaohua listened to her long-winded speech, but in his heart, he enjoyed it very much. He smiled slightly and nodded from time to time. In the end, Zhuo Minghui still said apologetically, "In the end, this absorption pill isn't suitable for you. Mistress, you'd better take a look at the energy-gathering pill. You're about to reach the 12th layer of the aura-refining realm. Medicinal pills are indispensable. Alas, unfortunately, Master doesn't know how to refine pills. Xiangyang and Qinglian also don't know how to refine pills. Only your mistress knows a little, otherwise." He waved his hand helplessly and said. Xiaohua's heart moved. He said with a smile, "I wonder if mistress has the pill formulas for the absorption pill or the energy-gathering pill? Huh, what, you know how to refine pills?" He stared helplessly, then said with pleasant surprise, "Master thinks too highly of disciple." Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand, then said in a low voice, "Disciple feels that. Disciple has been guarding the Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden. There's nothing else but the spiritual plants. Hee, aren't there a lot? Disciple also just received a lot of seeds from the Lightning Flash Hall. Disciple will first plant the pill formulas for the absorption pill and the energy-gathering pill. When the time comes, mistress can take the spiritual plants to exchange for medicinal pills. Wouldn't that be? Hee helplessly stared blankly at first. Then he looked at Xiaohua and laughed sinisterly. Only Xiangyang slightly frowned. "Little junior brother, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate, right?" "What's inappropriate?" Helplessly scolded. "According to your thinking, if you can't even get a single hair, who will refine pills and make talismans? Damn it, when can Xiaohua build his foundation?" "Master," Xiangyang felt very wronged. "Little junior brother just made a mistake. Don't make another mistake." "You," helplessly jumped up and said angrily, "It's you. You can only stay in the early stage of the foundation building realm. They. Husband." Zhuo Minghui also stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, "That child Xiangyang is right. What are you shouting for?" Helplessly, he glanced at his angry wife. His eyes turned, and his expression immediately changed. He said, "Your husband is only teaching Xiangyang to be more flexible. My voice is just a bit loud. I'm not shouting anything. Master is teaching disciples. Mistress, please take a seat first." Xiangyang also said quickly. Zhuo Minghui glared at Xiangyang and sat back in her chair. Yin Qinglian, on the other hand, had been sitting beside Xiangyang all along. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. Master, eldest senior brother, you don't need to worry. The Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden only has blazed dawn grass. The other spiritual plants are all barren. No one has ever paid attention to them. Disciple will find a place to plant the spiritual plants first." Hearing this, Zhuo Minghui pondered for a moment, then got up and returned to the back of the cave. After a moment, she came out again. Holding a jade slip, she handed it to Yin Qinglian and said, "Qinglian, this is the prescription for several kinds of medicinal pills for aura-refining disciples to take. Make a copy of it and give it to Xiaohua. Let him get some spiritual plants. If I go to senior sister empty-handed, I really don't have any face." Disciple obeys. Only now did Yin Qinglian raise her head and respectfully receive the jade slip. "All right." Helplessly waving her hand, she pointed to her right and said, "Xiaohua, from now on, you can sit here?" "Yes." Xiaohua waited for Yin Qinglian to bring over a chair, then carefully sat down. Helplessly, she looked at Xiaohua with satisfaction and said, "Now that you're already in the 11th layer of aura refining, it's time to start building your foundation. One is the problem of divine sense. If you still haven't developed divine sense by the time you reach the 12th layer of aura refining, you'll have to immediately use our sect's secret technique to stimulate divine sense. The later it is, the less likely you'll be able to build your foundation. Of course, there's no need to stimulate divine sense too early. Although those disciples of influential clans in the 11th layer of aura refining have divine sense, their future prospects are limited. You're a loose cultivator. From what I see, that heavenly laws embodiment technique of yours doesn't involve divine sense. I'm afraid it'll be a bit troublesome. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He was a bit anxious. Of course, he didn't have a Muwan palace, so how could he develop divine sense? Should I tell Master? Xiaohua was a bit hesitant. Just as he was hesitating, he helplessly said, although our sect's secret technique is different from other sects, in the end, it's all related to the rainbow epiphyllum. I'll give you the secret technique now, so you can familiarize yourself with it in advance. As for the item, when you reach the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, Master will go to the Thunder Palace to take a look for you. This item should be available in the Qiqiao Pavilion. However, it's hard to say how old it is. Master, the older the rainbow epiphyllum, the better, right? Xiaohua's heart stirred. He put the matter of the Muwan Palace aside and asked urgently. Of course. The older the rainbow epiphyllum is, the greater the possibility of developing divine sense. Helplessly and somewhat pensively, he said, it's just that there are a lot of disciples entering our Imperial Thunder sect this time. I'm afraid that the rainbow epiphyllum in the Qiqiao Pavilion won't be enough. We should act first to gain the upper hand. If we can't, then we'll have the disciples go to the major markets to buy them. Our Imperial Thunder sect is such a large sect. How could we not find these things? Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, if we can't find them, then we can use other spiritual plants. That's true. Helplessly, he rubbed his hands and said, your husband is afraid of delaying Xiaohua's cultivation. I'm a bit worried about personal gains and losses. On the side, Xiaohua also secretly nodded and once again sighed with emotion. AI, it's really good to have the support of a sect. Helplessly, he thought for a moment and said, after the matter of divine sense, it's the problem of cultivation methods. Xiaohua, your master and your eldest senior brother both cultivate the 10,000 June Thunderbolt cultivation method. This cultivation method can withstand the heavenly thunder of the 10,000 Thunder Valley and advance very quickly. It can be considered a medium-level cultivation method of our thunderous palace. Zhuo Minghui asked from the side, that's strange. If you don't let Xiaohua cultivate 10,000 June Thunderbolt, what other cultivation method can he cultivate? Hehe. Helplessly, with a mysterious expression, he pointed his finger and said, Xiaohua, show your sect master's command token to your master's wife. Yes, master. Xiaohua was secretly happy in his heart and took out the sect master's command token. It really is the sect master's command token. Zhuo Minghui suddenly realized and said with a smile, looks like it's the sect master's reward for Xiaohua. Hehe, exactly. Helplessly, he said in a low voice, in order to reward Xiaohua for sending the thunder-devouring bead back to the Imperial Thunder sect, the sect master specially issued a sect master's command that Xiaohua can cultivate all the cultivation methods of the 8 great thunder palaces. Ah? Zhuo Minghui and Yin Xinglian were both shocked when they heard this for the first time. What a pity. I don't know when this brat will be able to give me my lightning evasion technique. Helplessly, he sighed. Hehe, master, don't worry. Disciple will go to the Heavenly Thunder Palace and get that cultivation method for master. Xiaohua pretended to get up. Nonsense, quickly sit down. Helplessly, despite knowing Xiaohua's pretense, he still scolded with a smile. It won't be too late to find it when you go to choose your cultivation method. Since Xiaohua has this good fortune, then this cultivation method must be carefully chosen. Yin Xinglian nodded and said, Sigh, that's right. When there was no cultivation method, Xiaohua had to worry about finding one. Now that there is a cultivation method, he has to worry about finding a suitable cultivation method. Therefore, everyone has their own worries and every family has their own difficulties. This is indeed reasonable. -7. Chapter 1566. Helplessly looking at Xiaohua, he said in a deep voice, My Imperial Thunder Sect's cultivation methods are generally divided into 3 grades. The first grade is the high-grade cultivation method, which is cultivated by those with thunder attribute physiques. Not only is the progress very fast, but the power of the cultivation method is also very strong. The second grade is the middle-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for those with fire attribute physiques. The progress should also be okay, but the power of the cultivation method is reduced. I'm afraid it can't compare to the high-grade thunder attribute cultivation method. The third grade is naturally the low-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for disciples with other attribute physiques. The cultivation speed is not fast, and the power is also ordinary. Of course, there are some disciples with rare attribute physiques. Their cultivation methods are also high-grade, but these disciples are extremely rare even in my Imperial Thunder sect, so there's no need to talk about them. Xiao Hua said with a frown, "Disciple is of the fire attribute, so I naturally have to cultivate a fire attribute cultivation method. This can only be a middle-grade cultivation method. What else is there to choose?" "You idiot, if there isn't, why would Master say this?" Helplessly scolded. "What Master said above is only the general idea. My Imperial Thunder sect's 8 Great Thunder Palaces cultivation methods are all hidden in the Inheritance Pavilions. There are also the cultivation methods obtained by the previous masters when they were traveling outside. You, a little loose cultivator, can obtain 3 kinds of cultivation methods. How can my Imperial Thunder sect's cultivation methods be less than yours?" "Yes, disciple understands." Xiao Hua understood helplessness's temper. He lowered his head and said, "Looks like my Thunderclap Palace has a high-grade fire attribute cultivation method." "That's natural. Otherwise, Master and you—" Halfway through speaking, helplessness realized that he had just said it. He coughed and scolded, "You idiot! If our Thunderclap Palace doesn't have it, you can go to the other 7 Great Thunder Palaces. Master wants to tell you, especially the Heavenly Thunder Palace, there are many good things inside. But disciple can't tell if that cultivation method is good or bad." Xiao Hua somewhat scratched his head. "Damn it, Xiangyang. Copy the beginning of the 10,000 Thunderbolts cultivation method for Xiao Hua to see. Now that he knows what a middle-grade cultivation method looks like, is it still hard to find a high-grade cultivation method?" Helplessness was somewhat impatient. "Master, this isn't good." Xiangyang anxiously said, "My Imperial Thunder sect has its own rules. Xiao Hua can only receive Master's personal guidance when he reaches the Foundation Establishment stage. Moreover, if this Foundation Establishment cultivation method is seen by little junior brother earlier, I'm afraid it will be detrimental to his cultivation." What kind of bullshit rules are these? Which of those core formation martial uncles didn't casually give pointers to their aura-refining disciples? He mumbled helplessly, "Besides, I didn't give him any pointers. I only asked you to show him a cultivation technique. Oh right, after you read Xiao Hua's cultivation technique, you must not cultivate it. Your cultivation realm is insufficient. If you forcefully cultivate it, you will definitely perish." Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he bowed and said, "Disciple understands." Soon after, he helplessly hesitated for a moment before saying, "I've already told you about the cultivation method and divine sense. The only one left is the great circle of the aura-refining realm." Xiao Hua was an individual cultivator, so his cultivation method was lacking. From the first layer of the aura-refining realm to the 12th layer of the aura-refining realm, he didn't know how many areas needed to be perfected. "Sai, Master is also worried about you. How about this, Xiao Hua? We don't need the great circle of the aura-refining realm. You only need to cultivate to the peak of the aura-refining realm and break through to the foundation establishment stage. Then you can take a foundation building pill. We only need the small circle of the aura-refining realm." This, Xiao Hua also hesitated. After all, didn't he go to the Fu clan to look for the Qingyun talisman? He wanted to cultivate to the great circle of the aura-refining realm. Now that he had the method to refine the Qingyun talisman and the cultivation method, if he didn't cultivate to the great circle of the aura-refining realm, his heart would be really uncomfortable. Master, you've forgotten. Little junior brother is a loose cultivator. I'm afraid he has never heard of the great circle of the aura-refining realm." Xiangyang helplessly reminded Xiao Hua when he saw him hesitate. "Oh, right." Xiao Hua helplessly slapped his forehead. Just as he was about to explain, Xiao Hua said, "Disciple understands what the great circle of the aura-refining realm is. However, Disciple believes that since he can reach the great circle of the aura-refining realm, Disciple can't cultivate without reason. If Disciple really can't cultivate, disciple can just open the Qingyun talisman and directly enter the foundation establishment stage, right? How can it be that simple? Xiaohua helplessly smiled bitterly. Foundation establishment isn't just about cultivation realm, it's also about fate. If you miss the opportunity to enter the foundation establishment stage, it will be even harder to enter the foundation establishment stage. Ah, there's such a thing? Xiaohua was astonished. Hee, isn't that right? Look at your eldest martial brother. He still doesn't know? Xiaohua helplessly looked at Xiangyang and said, yes, what master said is the truth. Little junior brother, you still have to think twice. Xiangyang nodded. Xiaohua thought for a moment. In his mind, Li Zhongbao's great circle of the aura-refining realm appeared. His eyes flashed with a trace of unswerving determination. He smiled and said, disciple still wants to try. If it really doesn't work, disciple will open the Qingyun talisman. Xiaohua helplessly turned his head to look at Zhuo Minghui. The latter's eyes were filled with admiration as she slightly nodded. Ah, okay. Xiaohua helplessly sighed and said, in a few days, I'll go to Qiqiao Pavilion and help you fight for the Qingyun talisman. Qingyun talisman? Fight for it? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. Xiangyang smiled and said, the Qingyun talisman and the Qingyun talisman have roughly the same effect, only the names are different. As for fighting for it, it's because the Qingyun talisman is extremely difficult to refine. If it's not an outstanding disciple in the sect, it won't be given. When the time comes, whether or not little junior brother can get the Qingyun talisman is still uncertain. Afterwards, Xiaohua accompanied Xiaohua and Zhuo Minghui to talk for a while. Then, Xiaohua followed Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian back to their immortal's cave. Xiangyang was very concerned about Xiaohua's cultivation. He asked Xiaohua some details about his cultivation, but what could Xiaohua say? Xiangyang listened for a while and couldn't understand anything. He had no choice but to talk about some of his experiences when he was cultivating his foundation. This experience was the most precious. When Xiaohua was a loose cultivator, he definitely wouldn't have heard about it. Almost every word Xiangyang said hit Xiaohua's heart, causing him to scratch his head in excitement. Naturally, Xiaohua also asked a lot of questions. His questions were also very sharp. Sometimes, it was difficult for Xiangyang to answer. He even called Yin Qinglian, who was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, to answer. Unknowingly, the two of them talked for an entire night. When dawn broke the next day, Xiaohua reluctantly said goodbye and prepared to return to the eastern ridge. At this time, Yin Qinglian took out 4 booklets and gave them to him. At the top was the refining method of the invisibility talisman. Yin Qinglian said very gratefully, little junior brother, this invisibility talisman has already been copied into a jade slip. I'm currently comprehending it. Unfortunately, I don't have the blood and fur of a lizard beast, so I'm afraid I can't refine it successfully. However, I still have to thank little junior brother for being able to learn this invisibility talisman. Xiaohua promptly waved his hand. Senior sister has helped little junior brother so much. This invisibility talisman is nothing. When little junior brother gets a lizard beast for senior sister to refine into the invisibility talisman, it won't be too late to thank little junior brother then. Yin Qinglian covered her mouth and said, then senior sister will wait for little junior brother's lizard beast. The second booklet was, of course, the pill recipes for the soul-assimilating pill and soul-gathering pill. Zhuo Minghui didn't say that she would copy them completely, while Xiaohua only said that he would look for the spiritual grasses. Logically speaking, Yin Qinglian only needed to copy what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills, but she had completely copied down these 2 pill recipes. Xiaohua only needed to open the booklet to know what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills. The third booklet, needless to say, was precisely the first mnemonic chant of the foundation-building cultivation technique 10,000 June Thunderbolt and the method to circulate true qi through the meridians. Although the copy of this cultivation technique wasn't complete, the mnemonic chant and the initial refinement of the meridians and true qi were all clearly explained. Xiangyang's face was also somewhat awkward. He said in a low voice, little junior brother, the aura refining stage is the process of cultivators drawing spiritual energy into their body and refining it into true qi for their own use. As for the foundation building stage, true qi no longer exists. Instead, it liquefies and forms the so-called true essence. This true essence is the same as ordinary flowing water. No matter whether its quality or structure, it's not something true qi can compare to. Only by cultivating to the foundation building stage can one truly step into the realm of cultivation. Only then can one truly control magic tools and magic weapons and truly mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Therefore, this foundation-building cultivation technique is completely different from the aura refining stage cultivation technique. Little junior brother can only use it as a reference and absolutely cannot practice it. As for the fourth booklet, it was even more beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. It was actually a secret technique of the Imperial Thunder sect. It was a secret technique to refine the rainbow epiphyllum and other objects to stimulate divine sense. However, just as he said, Yin Qinglian had already prepared it. She was truly a good senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua took the 4 booklets and stored them in his space. He cupped his hands in thanks and said, "Little junior brother understands. If you have any questions, little junior brother will send a sound-transmitting talisman." "Good. You should cultivate properly. Elder brother won't disturb you. There's still a year before the next Flame Dawn grass submission. Just remember it when the time comes," Xiang Yang said with a smile. "Don't, eldest senior brother. If you have something to do, you should go more often. Little junior brother is very lonely there," Xiao Hua hurriedly said. Xiang Yang curled his lips and repeatedly said that he didn't believe him. Yin Qinglian took out 3 jade bottles from her storage pouch and said with a smile, "Little junior brother's monthly allowance is gone. I'm afraid that master's wife won't be able to find soul-gathering pills for the time being. Senior sister-in-law still has a few soul assimilation pills. They were also taken from junior sister Thunder Palace. You should take them for now." Senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua was really moved. Since he could remember, only Shang Huoming's 3 senior brothers had given him such care. That bastard Zhang Qingxiao even coveted his Peiyuan pill. Unfortunately, even if he wanted to give these pills to them now, he couldn't find them. "Take them for now." Xiang Yang waved his hand at this time. "Don't be a little girl. If you know how to cultivate diligently and reach foundation establishment a step earlier and win glory for our myriad Thunder Valley, elder brother and your senior sister-in-law will be satisfied." And Xiao Hua took the pills and secretly made up his mind. When he returned to the Eastern Ridge, he would immediately look for earth fire, immediately refine pills, immediately cultivate, immediately, a lot of things immediately. He must reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. He couldn't disappoint those who cared about him, and he couldn't let those who hurt him be happy. Thinking of foundation establishment, Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. He thought of 100 Herbs Gate. "Damn it, Zhang Jianong, just you wait. I'll be back soon. You've seized my Shang Huoming's place, so you must spit it out bit by bit," Xiao Hua thought. He cupped his hands and bid farewell to Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian, then flew to the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. With the identity token, Xiao Hua no longer had the chance to get lost. According to the map in the token and his own little bright spot, Xiao Hua easily flew to the Eastern Ridge. -7. Chapter 1567. As expected, the Eastern Mountain Range was far away, and the myriad Thunder Valley was even more remote. The two were not in the same direction. Although it was a bit closer than the Thunder Palace, it still made Xiao Hua fly for a long time. Seeing that the area ahead looked very barren and was not a good place to go, Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he thought, "I'm afraid I'm lost again?" Then, Xiao Hua hurriedly took out the identity tablet and opened the map. The direction should be correct. This should be a dangerous place of the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiao Hua had just thought of this when a deafening roar came from the mountain range to his right. Xiao Hua's body tensed up. That roar seemed to have the effect of confinement. Xiao Hua's flight technique lost its effect, and he immediately fell from the sky. Xiao Hua's heart also jumped, as if it was going to jump out. "Damn it!" Xiao Hua was shocked. On one hand, he shook his arms, trying his best to break free from the confinement around his body. On the other hand, he felt helpless and used the method to resist the sound of thunder that he had just taught. That method was indeed useful. Just as Xiao Hua broke free from the confinement around his body, his heartbeat also returned to normal. However, without waiting for Xiao Hua to fly up again, an emotionless divine sense quickly swept over. Foundation Establishment Spirit Beast. Xiao Hua was shocked. He didn't even have the time to be shocked. He urged his magic power and immediately used the Earth Escape technique. Like a stone, his whole body quickly fell down and disappeared without a trace. That divine sense followed Xiao Hua into the ground, but it immediately withdrew, as if it had lost interest in Xiao Hua and withdrew like a waterfall. After escaping very far underground, Xiao Hua felt that the divine sense didn't chase after him again. Only then did he shake off the sweat on his forehead and thought in a panic, "Did I make a mistake? Every time I come out, I have to run into something." Last time, it was a fight between two late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators, and I was caught in the crossfire. But fortunately, I was lucky and became a fisherman. This time, I directly ran into a spirit beast. I just flew past a dangerous place. Alas, why is there no safe place in the Imperial Thunder sect? In the future, I'll have to stay far away from these dangerous places. Xiao Hua escaped from the ground, identified the direction, and fled without a trace. By the time Xiao Hua fully utilized his flight technique and flew back to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, the sky had already turned completely dark. Even though the night was nothing to cultivators, Xiao Hua still felt somewhat cold in his heart. Only after he opened the array formation and returned to his abode did Xiao Hua feel slightly safer. But immediately after, Xiao Hua stomped his feet. What is this Thunder Flash Hall's deacon doing? Even the array formation token of the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden had been taken away by someone else, and he didn't even know about it. Damn it, I don't know when they'll be able to do it. You're all fine, but you're making me worry here. Sigh, there's nothing I can do. Xiao Hua raised his head and sighed, but soon after, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He put his palms together and muttered in the direction of the myriad Thunder Valley. Master, this disciple didn't call you elder, and it's not that I'm disrespectful. Who told you to have such a strange name? Afterwards, Xiao Hua released his perception and looked all around. Seeing that there wasn't anything abnormal, he placed the warning talismans in the abode and sat on a chair in the abode to ponder. This Eastern Ridge's array formation isn't very safe now. I have to think of a way myself. Evil Zhen's array formation is pretty good. It can even trap late-stage Foundation Establishment Kunmingwei. I have to hurry and see how this array formation is arranged. Xiao Hua was thinking about taking out Evil Zhen's things from the space, but just as his mind entered the space, he remembered that other Foundation Establishment cultivators use Divine Sense. He didn't have Divine Sense and only had Perception, so how could he control it? Moreover, he didn't seem to know the method to control Divine Sense. Moreover, he didn't have any method to control Divine Sense, so how could he? So I had the foresight to ask eldest senior brother to give me a method to control magic tools. Magic tools are controlled by Divine Sense. Even if there isn't a method to control them, it will definitely be involved. With this young master's intelligence, how could I not know how to use it? Thinking, Xiao Hua took out the booklet that Xiangyang gave him. Sure enough, not only did the booklet talk about the expedient method without Divine Sense, it also talked about the method to control magic tools in great detail. Although it didn't specifically teach about Divine Sense, Xiao Hua was still beaming with joy. That's right. Didn't eldest senior brother also give me the method to read jade slips? These two things can be used for reference. These days, Xiao Hua took a lot of things from Xiangyang, so he was somewhat confused. Fortunately, this young master has a master now, so I don't have to worry about these things. I have an honest and considerate eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law who have already prepared these incantations. I only need to properly practice them. Soon after, Xiao Hua's heart warmed again. It was as if even a black shadow couldn't be seen as black. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry to see how to control magic tools. First, he took out the method to use Divine Sense and carefully studied it. Then, he compared the method to read jade slips with Divine Sense. Late at night, he returned to his cave and sat cross-legged on a praying mat, cultivating heavenly laws embodiment technique. The next day, Xiaohua opened his eyes and checked his cultivation. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. In the past few days, he had been refining fire essence flame crystals, so his cultivation increased at a godly speed. Now, he didn't have any suitable medicinal pills to take, nor did he have any fire essence flame crystals to refine. His cultivation increased at a tortoise's speed, returning to the first layer of aura refining at Yellow Flower Ridge. It wasn't that it wasn't increasing, it was just too slow. Xiaohua still had some Qingyi pills in his space, but they were no longer suitable for the 11th layer of aura refining. He did have a lot of foundation establishment pills, but they were reserved for when he reached foundation establishment. Didn't you hear Wuqi say that? Foundation establishment was just a matter of opportunity. If he didn't grasp it, it would be difficult to step foot in the future. Soon after, Xiaohua didn't delay. He flew up and first found a pill room in Eastern Ridge. The pill room wasn't too far from the cave. The earth fire inside was sealed with a spell, just like the Fu clan. However, the seal was extremely firm. From the looks of it, it was at least the work of a foundation establishment cultivator. Xiaohua was helpless. He spent a tremendous amount of effort to use the tip of the devil's spear to loosen the seal. However, from the looks of it, there was still some distance before the seal was broken. Fortunately, the seal didn't automatically recover under the burning of the earth fire. Otherwise, Xiaohua would have vomited blood. Soon after, Xiaohua found a slightly suitable place and released the puppet. It flattened the mountainous area, tidied up the medicinal garden, and took the seeds of the spiritual herbs. At the very least, he had to do something to save face. For more than 10 days, Xiaohua didn't do anything else but tidied up these things. However, it could be considered as a harvest. The earth fire seal was finally broken through after his painstaking efforts. The spiritual herbs were also planted in his space. Of course, they were planted earlier than these. As for the method of using divine sense, Xiaohua was even more delighted. His perception was actually the same as divine sense and could be controlled by him. Needless to say, he could already read the jade slips. It was even possible to write things in the jade slips. Moreover, he also thoroughly understood the method of refining magic tools. The only thing left was to refine the magic tools in the space. Of course, his current focus wasn't on magic tools. He first put these aside and looked through Zhanxie's things. Zhanxie was a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. There were many things in his storage pouch. Aside from the spiritual herbs that couldn't compare to Xiaohua's, he had more spirit stones and medicinal pills than Xiaohua. Moreover, Zhanxie's storage pouch also had many jade slips and a small number of magic tools. As for the yellow talismans and other commonly used items, needless to say, there were even a few rare spiritual talismans. However, Xiaohua completely ignored all of this. He only took out those jade slips and looked through them one by one. The jade slips contained incomplete cultivation methods, pill recipes, talisman crafting methods, spell techniques commonly used by foundation establishment cultivators, and so on. There were also many that Xiaohua didn't understand. These were all thrown to the side by him. It wasn't until he picked up a jade slip that Xiaohua's furrowed brows relaxed. This jade slip recorded the arrangement and control method of the heavenly fire array. Of course, the jade slip didn't only record the heavenly fire array. There were also some basic formation principles and other formations. However, Xiaohua didn't want to study it in detail at this time. He put the other jade slips that he had seen and hadn't seen into the space. Only then did he carefully look at the heavenly fire array. The great fire array looked very difficult to understand. After looking at it for several days, Xiaohua suddenly realized that the great fire array was essentially the same as the warning amulet. The difference was that the warning amulet had different runes written on the child amulet in advance, and then used the parent amulet to control it. The great fire array was composed of array discs and array flags. The runes were written on the array discs and array flags in advance. The array discs were the child amulets which were arranged in secret places. The array flags were the parent amulets which were used to activate and control the array. Understanding this, Xiaohua still felt somewhat confused. It seems the array shouldn't be like this, right? But what is this array? He couldn't remember. All right, This young master will first understand this heavenly fire array and protect myself. Xiao Hua abandoned the idea of getting to the bottom of things and specifically pondered on how to arrange the heavenly fire array. In the blink of an eye, several dozen days passed, and Xiao Hua barely understood this array. Soon after, Xiao Hua left the cave and walked to a suitable location. With a wave of his hand, he took out a shiny formation plate. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. His hand formed a seal, and along with the movement of Xiao Hua's fingers, the surrounding slightly violent fire attribute spiritual energy was sucked into the seal. When the seal was formed, Xiao Hua's face was deathly pale. His hand felt as if it was holding a heavy object, and every wave was extremely difficult. In the end, Xiao Hua finished forming the hand seals. He clenched his teeth and urged the remaining magic power in his body. He flung his hand and hit the formation plate. The formation plate ignited with a tongue sound. It was like an orange-red flame that was extremely enchanting as it floated in the air. Moreover, along with the dancing of the flame, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also attracted, and the flame became increasingly bigger. -7. Chapter 1568. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes. He took out a few Qingyi pills and threw them into his mouth. He operated Heavenly Law's embodiment technique to refine the medicinal power and recover his magic power. When his magic power recovered a bit, Xiao Hua urged his magic power again. He pointed at the orange flame and shouted, "Quick!" Suddenly, the flame seemed to have gained sentience as it landed on the ground and disappeared. Once the flames disappeared, Xiao Hua also sat on the ground. He gasped for breath and said, "Damn it! This magic formation really isn't something an aura refining cultivator like me can make. I just finished making a magic plate and my magic power is already not enough. Wouldn't it take me several days to finish setting up the entire heavenly fire formation? Hee. But in this formation that can kill a foundation establishment late-stage cultivator, won't I be at ease?" As a result, Xiao Hua set up a formation plate every day. Then, the magic power in his body would be exhausted. Then, he would close his eyes and cultivate to recover his magic power. The next day, he would set up another formation plate. After several days, the entire heavenly fire formation was completely set up. Because the location of the earth fire was not very far from the cave, Xiao Hua considered safety and placed an abandoned alchemy room in the formation. After he finished setting it up, Xiao Hua was once again exhausted and had no magic power left. He could only clap his hands foolishly and say to himself, "This is a formation. I'm really a genius." However, when Xiao Hua recovered his magic power, he was stunned when he used his magic power to urge the formation flag. The entire heavenly fire formation couldn't be activated. Needless to say, there was definitely a problem with Xiao Hua's arrangement. In the following 10 days, Xiao Hua compared the jade slip and carefully thought about his method. He constantly improved it. Finally, on a night when dusk was rising, he finished setting up the entire heavenly fire formation. The instant he finished setting it up, Xiao Hua sensed that the fire-attributed spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the heavenly fire formation was suddenly sucked into the formation plate. It overflowed like flowing water in the formation plate. When it reached a certain equilibrium, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gradually disappeared. The formation plate's previous abnormality also disappeared. Wonderful! Xiao Hua clapped his hands. This was exactly the same as Zhang Xie's arrangement. However, right when Xiao Hua circulated his magic energy and activated the formation with a wave of the flag according to the jade slip, the extremely enormous suction force on the flag had absorbed all of Xiao Hua's magic energy in a short moment, and not a single drop remained. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's magic power was just enough for him to wave the spell flag once. Looking at the orange flame that appeared in the place he wanted to see with the wave of the spell flag in his hand, Xiao Hua's battered heart was revived. However, after resting for a while, Xiao Hua once again had some doubts. He knew that his magic power was different from ordinary cultivators. It was much more vigorous. Although he was currently in the middle stage of the 11th layer of the aura refining realm, Xiaohua believed that his magic power was absolutely comparable to the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Thinking about all the pills he had taken and the fire essence flame crystals he had refined, Xiaohua would naturally think so. In fact, he even believed that his magic power was not much weaker than an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. After all, these days, Xiaohua often dealt with early-stage foundation establishment cultivators, especially Xiang Yang. In Xiaohua's eyes, Xiang Yang's magic power, to be honest, was really. Since that was the case, then there was no reason for Xiaohua to wave the formation flag only once. Even if this formation flag was used by a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, the disparity couldn't be that great. Thinking about how Zhenxie had easily waved the formation flag that day and freely controlled the formation, Xiaohua's heart was filled with doubts. Could it be that there are still many secrets in this formation that I can't figure out? Xiaohua was very puzzled. He flipped through the jade slip again. But where were these records? Forget it, let's talk about it later. Xiaohua put down his doubts. Next, Xiaohua didn't stop. He first took the vitality absorption pill and tempered it. Sure enough, this vitality absorption pill was worthy of being a medicinal pill designated by the Imperial Thunder Sect. Its effect was not comparable to low-level medicinal pills like the Clear Breeze pill. Xiaohua felt that his cultivation had improved again. Since he knew that this vitality absorption pill was useful, then the so-called vitality gathering pill must also be effective. Thus, Xiaohua went to the pill room and took out the three-legged vermilion bird phoenix patterned furnace. While warming up the pill furnace, he took out the pill recipe that Yin Qinglian had copied and examined it. After he finished reading, his brows slightly wrinkled. With a wave of his hand, he took out another jade slip. This jade slip turned out to be Zhenxie's. It also contained pill recipes and alchemy techniques. Zhenxie was originally an alchemist who refined the clear flower pill, so he naturally had these things on him. Xiaohua didn't look at it carefully. After all, what was recorded in this jade slip were basically medicinal pills used by foundation establishment cultivators. There were only a few records of medicinal pills used by high-level qi refinement cultivators like the Vitality Absorption Pill and the Vitality Congregation Pill. Only after seeing that the things inside were the same as what was recorded did Xiaohua put away the jade slip and booklet. He frowned and pondered. The method of refining the Vitality Absorption Pill is different from the method of refining the Clear Pleasure Pill. There are many areas where the difference is very large. My methods are suitable for refining the Clear Pleasure Pill, but I don't know if they can be used when refining the Vitality Absorption Pill. This Vitality Absorption Pill's main ingredient also contains the Vitality Absorption Fruit. I'm afraid it's about the same as refining the Peiyuan Pill. Of course, the about the same in Xiaohua's heart was referring to his own refining techniques. He had a lot of spiritual herbs in his space, and the main ingredients and supplementary ingredients for refining the Vitality Absorption Pill were all present. Once the pill furnace was ready, Xiaohua began to refine the Vitality Absorption Pill. The refining room for the Vitality Absorption Pill was naturally complicated. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the Clear Breeze Pill. However, with Xiaohua's experience of refining pills in the Fu Clan's pill refining room, he gradually fumbled around. After more than 10 days of hard work, he finally succeeded in refining 4 medicinal pills in a furnace. After casting the cultivation technique into the pill furnace, Xiaohua took out the Vitality Absorption Pill given to him by Zhuo Minghui and put it into his mouth. He then operated his cultivation technique to refine the medicinal efficacy. Soon after, he took out the Vitality Absorption Pill given to him by Yin Qinglian and similarly refined it in his meridians. He then opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Sure enough, the Vitality Absorption Pills given to Master and Senior Sister-in-law are the same. I'm afraid this medicinal pill is the same as the Clear Flower Pill. Every year, there's a fixed alchemist who refines it and then distributes it to the aura refining disciples as a regular offering." Thinking up to this point, Xiaohua slapped his head and took out a jade bottle from his space. He thought to himself, "This is young master's first month's regular offering at the Imperial Thunder Sect. If it wasn't for eldest senior martial brother helping me receive it, I'm afraid I would have been punished and confiscated, right? This is also a Vitality Absorption Pill." Xiaohua took out the medicinal pill from the jade bottle and took a look. Soon after, he also took it. After a long while, the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill was refined by him. Xiaohua opened his eyes and sneered. The medicinal efficacy of this vitality absorption pill is inferior to the previous two. I'm afraid it was refined by two different alchemists. Moreover, looking at how the medicinal efficacy is so far apart, not only is there a difference in the level of alchemy between the two alchemists, there's also a difference in their cultivation, right? Soon after, Xiaohua waved his hand and the jade bottle on the ground flew into his hand. He said with a smile, I wonder how much of a difference there is between young master's level and that of the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists? However, after waiting for a moment, before Xiaohua had time to refine the medicinal efficacy, his face revealed a trace of amazement, as well as a trace of pleasant surprise. It was a face full of pride. Damn it! Could it be that young master is an alchemist? After refining the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill, Xiaohua opened his eyes and immediately somersaulted several times in the air. How can the vitality absorption pill refined by myself be compared to the one refined by the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists by several times? How can the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists endure this? Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed heartily. However, just as this laughter resounded through the pill refining room, it came to an abrupt stop. Xiaohua stared blankly on the spot. Soon after, Xiaohua's face revealed an expression of sudden realization. He jumped up from the ground and said loudly, I understand. Why is it that foundation establishment cultivators can easily set up formations, but I have to use so much effort to set them up? It turns out that it's just as eldest senior brother said. Foundation establishment cultivators have a lot of true qi in their meridians, but it's true essence. True essence is liquid true qi. No matter whether it's quality or quantity, it's not on the same level as true qi. And how can the magic power produced by true essence compare to the magic power produced by true qi? They're simply not on the same level. Moreover, I also understand what Master said before on Yellow Flower Ridge. Without a realm, even if one's magic power continuously increases, what's the use? The magic power casually used by a foundation establishment cultivator is more than the magic power of a qi refining cultivator. Moreover, Xiaohua laughed out loud. Moreover, how would I know what it is? I'm afraid that only when this young master enters foundation establishment will I know the specific difference, right? Damn it, this young master must enter foundation establishment. Xiaohua thought. He reached out and took out the vigorous thunderbolt cultivation technique. Although Xiangyang repeatedly warned him not to read it too early, Xiaohua really couldn't help it. Of course, this foundation establishment cultivation technique was different from qi refining cultivation technique. The mnemonic chant was quite obscure, and Xiaohua didn't understand many parts of it. Fortunately, Xiaohua wasn't really cultivating right now. He just wanted to see how this cultivation technique was like in the end. He wanted to have a foundation in his heart so that he could go to the 8 Great Lightning Palaces Technique Inheritance Pavilion in the future to look for even higher level cultivation techniques. Although Vigorous Thunderbolt was different from Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, they both used meridians to temper the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Inside, there were naturally descriptions of meridians. However, after more than 10 days of reading and thinking, Xiaohua had some doubts. The meridians of this foundation establishment cultivation technique actually weren't connected to the meridians of the qi refining realm. This was naturally a very strange matter, because among the qi refining cultivation techniques that Xiaohua had come into contact with, regardless of whether it was Death Flower Underworld, Raising Fire to the Heavens, or Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, the end of each layer of the cultivation technique was connected to the beginning of the next layer of the cultivation technique. In Xiaohua's understanding, a higher layer of cultivation technique was to break through the barriers between different meridians and use a new tempering method to temper even more spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians. Foundation establishment cultivation techniques were naturally to break through the barriers of new meridians after reaching the 12th layer of the qi refining realm and then cultivate in the new meridians. 7. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.